Bard is a dumb name.
Don't talk.
Wow.
Wow, you're coming out spicy on my bar.
ChatGPT is so good it doesn't even need a name.
It's literally called ChatGPT.
It's like what it is. There's no name.
Okay, Bard is kind of
It's a ChatGPT.
What does GPT stand for? I never knew that.
Oh, that's a nerdy one. Generative pre-transformer.
Yeah, I think you're pretty close.
Yeah.
It's a pretty cool name.
Generative
transformer.
pre-transformer. What's the T? It's not the transformer.
It is. I think it is.
No.
Yeah. Generative pre-trained transformer.
Pre-trained. There you go. There's the second
Thanks,
T.
Jamie.
Pre-trained transformer. Yeah, no. ChatGPT is on another level, and Nick's in public denial.
Nope.
I'm a Bard man myself.
Data.
Okay, by the way, I was using Bard a lot this week, and it's a piece of trash.
No, it really is.
It's like terrible.
It lies constantly. It just hallucinates about everything.
It was really useful for looking up the rules of board games when I was using it, which was kind of interesting. But you don't have to, you can connect GPT to web now, which I started screwing around with today. Actually, I spent hours today.
Preeminently better.
Just you just go into the settings menu and you check that there's something to enable it, and then you select the web browsing model, and it's great. It's way better than Bard.
What game were you playing?
It made me want to just go short Google, to be honest.
Wow.
Dude, they jumped the gun hard.
They jumped the gun hard.
They're
It's not
playing
ready
catch
yet.
up, and they sort of are over-indexing on confidence. They obviously told Bard to be as confident as possible in its answers to give this level of certainty. So it just causes it to hallucinate way more than many of these other models. So, I mean, they're all built differently. Everyone will choose their model. If you want your model to lie to you and appear
hallucinate.
and hallucinate and just be high with you, that's fine. You know, I like a little.
All right, I'm done with this roasting.
Okay,
all right,
fine.
because I actually don't feel confident enough to defend it.
No, I kind of liked this. I wanted this little Bard GPT.
It was fast. It was free, and it scrolled the internet, right? It crawled the
I
internet.
used it for betting advice.
Have I used it for, or did you use it for betting advice?
Because it gives you the real time betting lines, and then it'll tell you stats on how many times someone hits the over a season.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
All right, boys. So first of all, welcome to everybody.
Yeah, welcome.
Big welcome to our second ever all together in person live stream episode in the studio.
What are we drinking?
We're drinking some Illegal.
What am I not drinking?
Illegal Mezcal Reposado.
Hook a brother up.
Oh, in that sense, I thought you meant you don't want any.
And while he's pouring that, real quick,
Gracias, as we
This is
say.
good shit.
Eric is switching screens hands free. No, just kidding. We got Jordan in the studio, guys. You guys can't see him, but he's back here swapping
Jordan.
screens, taking care of everyone. Thank you, Jordan, for joining us.
Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
Someday we'll have a budget for another camera, maybe. Jordan cam.
But,
Jordan can.
This is just a normal 40%, 80 proof bad boy. So I will hopefully not be slurring.
Yeah, we haven't done 6 hours of
at the end
pre-gaming
of
either.
this. Yeah.
Oh, has everyone hit the 2-drink minimum? Calcium just reminded me.
I'm at one.
Guilty.
I'm at one. I'm sorry. I'm gonna level with you. The technical difficulties really cut into the drinking. By the way, you're getting a lot of compliments on your pants.
Well, I finally fit back into them because I bought them on sale one day on clearance, and I couldn't fit into them, but I was like, I will.
It was one of those purchases.
Yeah, it was one of those. And then
Did you get a waist size 30, 29? What do you got there?
I think this is a 3-1.
I could see you fitting into a 31. Yeah.
Yeah, snug.
It's the eggplant for me. You know, I think that's what's standing out. The maroon.
My dick.
Yeah, that's what you were referencing.
No, that is not where I was going at all.
I literally thought you were talking about his dick when you said the egg.
Well, we've been demonetized before we even monetized. Thank you,
man.
boys.
Thank you.
Oh man, wow, you're 31. That's incredible.
Today I am.
I'm a 31 as well.
I call bullshit.
I will take my pants off right now. If anybody in the chat wants
For $9, Steven will take his pants off right now.
I will do it. You don't think these are 31s?
I believe it.
I mean, the confidence alone makes me believe it.
I am
But
slim.
I believe
I'm
it.
slim trim waist.
At one point, I was more of like a 33. Now I'm a 32. 33 was comfortable though. I liked it, but I'm all hips. I'm literally all hips, all ass.
yeah.
All right.
All
So
right. What are we doing today? We're gonna do some.
Let's give a brief overview of where we
yeah.
think this will go today. So, first off, well, I don't know what order we want to take this in as well. Is there a preference here? We definitely want to talk about what's been going on in the week. I know Eric's had some stuff on his mind.
Mhm.
He's been looking at a real estate deal.
Yeah, let's get some of the financial stuff
Yeah.
out of the way first.
I want to hear anyone else got going on, any general alfalfa. Worldcoin, very interested there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. caught up on some of his content recently. Excited to hear what you guys think. And maybe talk about the movie Air.
Maybe. We have
Wrap
time.
up.
Maybe we'll see
Yeah.
how it goes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Should I
Kick
lead
us
it off?
man? Yeah.
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
go.
Okay, so
me.
one of the privileges of going to a rich private high school is that you get to go to school with the owner of the Lakers kids, owner of the Chargers kids, but also one of my old classmates runs one of these real estate investment funds that Nick's always talking about, the GPLP real estate investment structure. So I was presented earlier this week with an opportunity to invest in one of these real estate deals, and I've never done one. I've never even looked at them. So I didn't even know where to begin in terms of analysis. So I thought it would be a cool exercise to run this deal by you guys, and particularly, you know, like the king of mailbox money, the king of these real estate investment deals. So I want to run it by Nick. Nick's already taken a look at the PowerPoint. So let me describe this really quick. So this real estate deal, it's small by Nick's standards. It's a 22 unit building in San Diego, like a residential multifamily. It's like a couple blocks south of downtown. And
Here?
for the yeah.
Oh,
For
it's
those who
local.
don't know San Diego, like if you go a couple blocks south of downtown, it's like not that nice. It's like pretty shady. I don't know the exact neighborhood. It's like Logan Heights or something. It's pretty gross. If we're being honest.
No
No, it
offense
is.
to all our listeners.
Sorry, I went to private school. Like I don't know anything south of
We'll get an
downtown.
elitist on the pod. here.
So I was looking at this deal, and I think like the overall cost is like $6 million ish. And I was like talking to Nick, what do you do here? What do you look at first? What's the first thing you pull up? And we pulled up the PowerPoint, and Nick immediately scrolls down to like page 17, and he's like skips over everything. He's just like, we're going to the financials.
That's right, baby.
Mhm.
So what did you see there, Nick? What was like the first thing you looked at was like the cash on cash return. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, you kind of teed up the story of like this deal first, which is this deal's in the hood. And so like the first thing you typically look at is like what class and business model we're talking about. So there's class A, class B, class C. Class A is your like high net worth, very great area town. Your class C is, you know, the hood essentially. And we call this maybe a class B minus.
C plus.
C plus,
All
maybe being a little generous, I'd say. And then the business model is a value add. So they're going to go in there and fix shit up and lease stuff for hire. Other business models are like development, new development. Some are called core, which is literally you buy it and just do nothing with it. So we looked at that. This is a class C business model that is value add. And that class tells us what we should expect for the cash on cash in the annual return. So typically in these lower income neighborhoods, you'd expect the cash on cash to be higher and maybe the annual return, the overall annual return to be lower because maybe we're not going to get that much appreciation.
You're not going to sell it for like a ton of money.
Maybe. So that's what we were thinking going in. And it seemed like over a 10-year period, the average cash on cash was around 6.5%. And they were underwriting, let's call it round up to like a 12% annual return. So right off the bat, like it's lower than my 15% annual return that I
Nick
look for.
requires 15%.
Right, because you need a premium for the illiquidity, right? You're not going to be able to touch this money for 7 to 10 years. So I think you need to demand a premium to like what you would expect.
So
in
with this
alternative
deal, there
investments.
was a $100K minimum investment. Is that pretty common? What you
typical.
see?
Yeah, and I'd say if you're a first-time investor to people who do these deals often, you can ask for an exception. Like, don't hesitate to be like, hey, this is the first one I did was 100K minimum. I was like, listen, guys, I've never done a deal like this before. It's a lot of money to give, you know, one company. Can I go in for less? And they were like, yeah, no problem. They're always looking for younger, new investors. They need to keep the pipeline full.
Fresh blood.
Yeah, fresh blood. So don't hesitate to ask for an exception. They often give it.
So
give
this
it.
historical, you're basing off what?
The historical, like
The annual return.
oh, just on what I've seen before, but also like what
No,
they're-
but for this specific property, where'd you guys get that?
Oh, well, that was what they put in their projections. They said
it was their
12%. Yeah, their
projection. Okay.
projections. So we looked a little closer. It does average to 6.5% over 10 years, but in the first 1 to 3 years, it was like 3%, 3.5%, 4% in year 1, 2, and 3. Sounds a little low for like I'd say a low income area.
Well, so here's the deal. So like what on these multifamily deals, what you have is you have 22 units, apartments, and then you're renting those out to tenants, and those guys are paying their monthly rent, and that comes out to the 2 or 3% cash on cash return. So on this particular deal, because it's kind of in the hood and these are like old apartments, what you expect is that you're going to get less rent up front, and then you can like refurbish and remodel these places and then like up the rent to more of like a market rent over time.
So these were 50% under market rents, but and we were trying to figure out why is the cash on cash so low. So we looked at some of the exit cap and purchase cap rates. We don't need to get into it, but essentially a lower cap rate is a higher valuation. A higher cap rate is a lower valuation. So it seems they paid quite a bit for this. They overpaid for the property, which is why maybe we're getting a lower cash on cash. Also, the loan to value, which we'll get into the loan a bit, they're not leveraging as much. It's like a 40% loan to value. So that could also be why it doesn't compare to other, the cash on cash you typically see in a deal like this. So let's talk about a few things real quick. So in the cash on cash, you typically want to make sure there's not a refinance, like scheduled into the assumptions. And that's one thing we did look at is like, is that refinance in there? You don't want that in the projections because you don't know if that's actually going to happen. And they can use those to pump up the IRR.
Pump the numbers, right?
Yeah. So you don't want to see that in there. And if you do see it, ask them for the financials without the refinance in there. We talked a little bit about the debt structure. We did look at that. We want to know, is it fixed or floating? We want to know, like, are there any prepayment penalties? Because if there are, you're likely not to get a sale of the property within 5 to 7 years, and you shouldn't expect maybe a refinance within that time period, which is kind of part of the beauty of this thing. When you can sell it, you could 1031 it. When you refinance, you can pull some capital out. So if there's prepayment penalties, you shouldn't expect that. Because
a 1031 is when you have that loophole where you can just roll the proceeds directly into another property and you pay no tax on it, right?
Tax-free, baby.
Yeah, that's a real estate tax loopholes they're epic.
A beautiful thing. It's my whole life wealth accumulation strategy.
Biden's going after the crypto trader tax.
Yeah, we're too boring. Leave us alone.
In the budget, all those rich crypto traders making bank in the. Oh, wait a minute.
Last thing on loan is just you don't want to make sure not leveraged to the tits. So like, I think 65% loan to value these days is kind of about as high as you want to go because they can also juice the numbers by just leveraging higher, which we've all done.
So this particular deal was like a pretty reasonable loan to value. It was like in the 40s.
It was very low.
30s to 40s. It was low.
Yeah.
It was low. So that seemed safe. The fixed rate debt was 5.6%.
Not terrible.
Not terrible in this environment. I think another thing you were looking at is the property manager. Right.
So the person you're giving the money, ideally, they'd be the ones to manage the property for several reasons. In this scenario, they were using an external property management firm.
So you're saying most of these groups sort of have their own property management branch to their...
Like a wholly owned subsidiary of their firm that actually does the property management on site, leasing out properties, fixing the toilets.
They usually just dominate one region, one city.
So you picked up
to be able to do that.
On the main thing is that ideally they have a property management company in-house and they also manage properties nearby so that they get economies of scale and you get economies of scale on your investment. So you can save on that. When they outsource the property management, the property management firm gets the economies of scale and they don't necessarily pass those on to you, the investor.
And the property manager might not have skin in the game in the investment themselves. Like they themselves don't have skin in the game.
Sure, they're not incentivized to fill the properties. And,
also,
ensure vacancy is low and
play this out real time, right? So this company comes to the property management firm and says, "Hey, we're looking to buy this property. Can you give us some quotes on what you think you can get for rent?" Well, they're probably in it for a long term, but really the incentives lie for them to show them something good so that this firm follows through on buying the property so that they can get the business. So in general, I have a policy of like sticking to investments where the property management is in-house.
Are the the fees that the general partner takes something that is crucial to you? Is that something that's really important?
It's not necessarily like a deal breaker, because like at the end of the day, all you care about is what's getting paid in your pocket. So typical deal structure is a preference, meaning you get paid a return before anyone else. So this deal had a 7% pref, which means if you put 100K in, the first 7K goes to you, and they have to pay that, and they have to repay that if they don't in previous years before they can even take a dollar. So then they after the 7% pref, they typically take anywhere from 20 to 30%. This one was kind of right in the middle. They take 25% of the profit after you've earned 7% a year.
And that all seemed pretty standard.
Yeah, pretty kosher.
And then what about
I'd want a higher pref.
yeah, what would you take?
I don't know.
I think with some of the deals, if you put in $1 million, you get a 10% pref.
Yeah, I'd want a higher.
Yeah, it would be nice. What about like the investment from the general partner?
So that's a good point. So you always want the general partner to have capital in, and there's little loopholes they use. They'll say, we're putting in 10% of the capital, and in small fine print, it'll say in deferred fees, meaning you're going to pay them fees when you put in your money, and they're going to call that part of the capital and just kind of mark up their equity. Yeah, very sneaky.
That's sneaky.
Yeah, so I mean,
I don't like that.
Part of me empathizes with them, because like they probably, if they're doing like 10 deals a year, like you just run out of cash to like.
Sorry if you guys said this already, but does this group have like a pretty established track record here?
That's a good question, because that's one of the first things Nick asked me. And the truth is, I just went to school with this guy. Like, I don't know his like career background, and like when he sent it to me, I didn't really do much diligence on that. I just know that he's been doing this a long time. His family's been doing it, so I didn't really inquire.
It's a perfect example though, because this is how people often hear about these deals, right?
Right?
Oh, I know of someone who does this. My friend's investing in it. Should I invest in it? And we're trying to make sure the audience is a little bit smarter than the average bear when going into
So when you were talking to me about it, you were talking about the track record, but you were specifically talking about like how many deals have they done in like the last year or so? And this was like kind of alpha for you.
Yeah. So you typically want to compare, like if you have someone that you invest with, typically you want to compare how many deals they're doing a year compared to like a good company. Because often if they're doing a lot more deals than the average company, probably means they're just too aggressive in their underwriting. Like they are trying to bite off more than they can chew. They're being too aggressive in terms of what they think is a good investment. You want a general partner who's turning down like 95% of the deals they see. So
95.
if someone's like, hey, we're doing like 12 deals a year, and you know the benchmark, the good guy over there is doing 3, kind of red flags start to go off in terms of their underwriting.
Okay, here's another thing that we wrote down is like the alpha here is like understanding how they use the depreciation.
Oh yeah. So typically, so you won't find this often, but one of the benefits of investing in these deals is that the depreciation writes off your profit. So that cash on cash you get every year, spend it all. Don't save any for taxes, because the depreciation is going to be greater than the profit. When you get your K1 at the end of the year, essentially your tax return for owning a piece of that LLC, you're going to show a negative, which is a beautiful thing.
Even if you're getting paid tax-free dollars.
Exactly. You receive cash, but your tax return shows negative. Sometimes they get a little tricky where these GPs, the general partners, will not pass down the depreciation to you as the investor in a pro rata format. So if you own 1% of the property, you don't necessarily get 1% of the depreciation. So we don't like that, and we always like to ask, because it's typically not explicit in the business plan.
Do you have a checklist of these items?
We're going through it right now, brother.
Well, do you have a checklist?
Yeah, I have a GP checklist. Like I interview them all and I ask them the same set of questions. And then in the deals
Like
now,
these?
I just,
like, do you?
yeah,
like
it's
these?
a spreadsheet.
Okay.
It's called GP questions.
I feel like this should be like a Google Doc or a Notion.
Yeah, well, Nick's
the
gonna
public.
mint it as an NFT and then sell it to you guys.
Fine.
Let's see here. What else should we go through? Let's talk about a little about stress testing these deals. So like, let's actually talk about the deal itself, because all we talked about is like structure and debt. There's main things that increase your return as a multifamily owner. It's pretty simple. It's really 3 things. It's population growth, wage growth, and job growth. So you need to understand what makes up the local economy of that area. So in Southeast San Diego, and I'll give an extreme example just as a comparison. You look at like deals in Houston, heavily reliant on the oil industry. Like those jobs are based on the oil industry. And so while you could have made a deal on a great investment property, didn't know you had a 0.9 correlation to oil prices, and you may not have wanted that going in, and 6 years later you get rug pulled if for some reason oil prices go down. So We were joking that the ideal property is in between a hospital, a military base, and maybe a tech hub. You know, you have healthcare that is not going away, military which won't go away, and then maybe like something that produces job growth like a tech hub. I know Reno has a pretty thriving tech hub there as well, or maybe an Amazon distribution center for steady jobs. And then the last thing you want to look at the deal is like incoming supply. So over the next 2 years, there is the most amount of multifamily, meaning apartment supply coming online. And you want to make sure you're not in the path of that over the next 2 years. And it's particularly the next 2 years because, well, all the capital allocators in the world have noticed that multifamily has outperformed most asset classes. So they're developing as much as they can. So that's another thing you want to check out in terms of location and the actual deal itself.
So guys, with this particular deal and it's 7% cash on cash return, did that sound compelling enough to drop a $100K of your own dollars?
That sounds terrible.
No.
That's what I was thinking.
No.
Okay, so what I like
Just buy the NASDAQ.
as you zoom out of this
No.
whole thing,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm looking at the entire universe of investable securities and asset classes.
Yeah.
Like treasury bills are paying 5.25% with zero risk. Like, why lock up your money, go illiquid and risky when you can get a 5% cash on cash
You
return?
can farm like 7.7% now on Arbitrum and compound.
Yeah, but
Get a little known
duration is
farm.
On stables?
Yeah, like I
Wow.
feel like nobody's talking about this as well. We don't have to derail it though.
No,
Yeah.
but
look
yeah,
into that.
Let's
Look into that,
let's
guys.
table that. Yeah.
I think duration is an important factor. If you know you need a certain amount in real estate and you need to deploy the capital in order to stay at the allocation level that you require, and that's the best deal that you have. First of all, I don't think you should ever feel pressured. A person should never feel pressured into investing into a deal simply because it's the best one in front of them. Patience goes a long way. But my point is, like, these are the types of deals. The reason I like them is because it's a set and forget. I don't have to go and worry about like, okay, I got to swap out from T-bills and go into stables and then go back into cash because everything's burning and then go into crypto. And I don't have to move it around. It's just there. I know I want a certain percentage of my portfolio in real estate. And maybe that deal was not a top 10 deal or a top 3 deal, but it's a deal. And it's a, pretty consistent return. It's boring money,
Yeah.
but getting rich slowly in a boring way, in my opinion, is a smart thing to do. Now that goes completely counter to, Stephen, when we had the kids here, like you talked about, you and Eric talked about like the two approaches to becoming wealthy. There's the turtle
The slow
and
compounder and
the
then
rabbit
there's
in the hare.
Yeah.
So,
Jordan thinks this 7% is killer.
so I mean, look,
Yeah,
like
he knows. He knows.
like
I
Steven
wanna give a
is the
rebuttal to
gambler,
this.
right? There's the gambler, and then there's the person with the tolerance for risk that is willing to strike gold, and you got to ask yourself which guy you are. I think I tried to be that guy over the last few years, and I'm definitely not that guy. And I think that's an important lesson. And any money that I lost in this last cycle to me was just like pure like investment in my own self to realize like how I want to invest going forward. And I spent so much time and energy and time on planes rewriting and writing and rewriting my investment thesis to just ingrain it in me so that I would not perform some of the same behaviors and actions that I did in this last cycle, because I just thought it's a new game, it's a new game, it's a new game. And we talked about that so much on this pod.
Well, you know what we
It's a new
call that,
game,
my
it's a new
man?
game.
Wisdom
Yeah,
earned.
exactly. And you pay the $100 for it.
So what, I agree with everything you're saying. But also one thing that I noticed in talking with Nick earlier, it's like these deals make a ton of sense for a certain investor type. Like it's tax advantaged structure, meaning like you get that like cash on cash return.
That was my follow-up. So
Yeah,
this
yeah.
doesn't factor in any taxes, right?
Yeah.
Because if you bring taxes into it, I could see that being
Taxes are always in it.
But it has to be
Yeah.
in it.
but when you're saying 7% cash on cash, you're saying like,
That's post-tax.
oh, that is post-tax.
Yes, because the depreciation typically for the first 10 years of the property will
Well,
wipe out
I
that
don't
profit.
understand why everybody is like falling over to get 7% on San Diego real estate, Jordan. I don't get
But
that. If that's
but
like all
also
in.
the other thing is like keep in mind your T-bills are taxed as well. That federal government pays you
Yeah.
and then they tax you right back on that 5 and
State exempt, I believe.
State exempt, correct.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, the type of investor, and I would say if you have enough liquid cash for whatever you're going to need over the next like handful of years, then yeah, you can invest in these. If it's your only 100K, or maybe you have 150K saved up, put 100K in an illiquid deal, probably not right for you. If you do have that cash, and I've gotten this question like 3 times last week, uh, I know maybe right now is not the good time to do these deals, but a good deal came across. You like it, I like it. Should I do this? If you're severely underweight this asset class in your portfolio, then do it, because it may be worth starting the compounding clock now. But
There you go. That's another huge factor.
yeah, because one of the benefits of this is not only
Get into a mediocre deal sooner.
Because the way I found it really compound in my scenario is where, and I think Edmund mentioned this in the chat, like you can, once it's the
Edmund
renovations,
Dantes?
yeah.
I love that guy.
Once the renovations are done and it's leased up, like you can refinance and get quite a bit of your money back. I mentioned this in previous pods where I've gotten 90% of the capital back and threw it right back in a new deal.
Yeah.
And now off that original 100K, your cash on cash is like phenomenal. So there are benefits to this, that starting the compounding clock now makes a lot of sense. I'll add 2 other benefits we haven't talked about before. One, if you're worried about the U.S. raising taxes because of a deficit situation in the future, like we talked about.
Oh, is there a deficit?
Yeah.
Is there any debt?
If you ever believe in the financial repression that at some point the federal government in the next 10 years is going to have to, or 20 years is going to have to raise taxes, I think that this form of tax loophole is safer than others. And so it's a good path to kind of avoid that.
Why is it safe? Because too many rich people like it, and
Yeah.
lobby to
Bingo.
make sure it
But-
doesn't. Okay,
Exactly. But
I can get
also,
behind that.
also
thesis.
like I think a lot of I know there's people in this chat who have rental income. It's not just hyper wealthy people. Like everyday Americans, as they build wealth over time, a lot of them get a side rental property, and
Dude,
they want to have that.
Tunsky's got like 3 or 4.
He's got a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Dude's slanging
Sounds a
real
little
estate.
overexposed, my man.
I don't know. It's such a cool thing to be able to do if you know your local area and you can kind of
Yeah,
add value.
it is
and
cool.
you can walk the streets and know
It's
exactly.
such a good
what-
way to get rich slow. I don't mean to hate on it at all.
No,
Like,
I
it's-
wish I lived in like Nebraska and could buy houses for $45,000, man. It was amazing. Just buy them outright.
The last benefit that we haven't mentioned before in previous podcasts is like, if you do believe that we would ever potentially enter like a hyperinflation scenario, right? Like if we achieve a soft landing and inflation reignites, well, what better way than to own a good chunk of the CPI index itself, right? Which is owner's equivalent rent or rent in general. And so this is one way to kind of protect yourself from taxes and a hyperinflation if you think those are part of the future.
Oh, damn. This is interesting. Well, before I go to that, I have a question for you, Eric. Back at you. I mean, are you chomping for the 7?
Well, not the 7, but I was very intrigued based on all of our discussions previously on this asset class. And, I have a home for myself, but nothing that's generating cash flows on the side, a la Nick or Steven. And I'm just thinking like, yeah, this probably sounds pretty good. But this particular deal, 7% cash on cash, is not getting me out of bed.
So now, having gone through the analysis, the checklist that Nick is going to be dropping in the Discord as an NFT, fine. Either way, drop it in. And now, having gone through this conversation a few times on the pod, are you in a position where you are going to actively look for one of these deals?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to be actively looking. I think where I'm at is like one thing that I noticed about this deal in particular is that the going in cap rate becomes very important. It's like the price that you pay for a property ends up very much mattering to your like overall return.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like right now what I'm seeing across all asset classes, it's like prices are high and risk is high. Like I would ideally like to time it where you can get in where prices are low and risk is low, and that's just market timing.
Yeah.
So I think I would personally like to be a little greedier on my entries.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought it was very illuminating going through this process and learning how to even just like approach the analysis part of this.
I'm waiting for early next year. We talked about how like these floating rate apartment complexes are just, these guys are fucking sweating right now. and they're probably able to keep it together with like a 3% rent growth rate. But if that rent growth goes flat or potentially negative, and they're not able to continue to release these higher, I think there's going to be some distressed sellers. We already saw one property come through is very distressed, and that's going to keep coming up, I think, over the next like 9 to 12 months. Jordan, let me know in the chat if you agree. There's a pretty wide bid ask spread, between buyers and sellers, meaning the sellers think it's worth more and the buyers like, fuck you, no, it's not. And so there's not a lot of deals happening, but over time, I think those sellers are going to be sweating and just come to the reality that this is a high interest rate environment. We need to all raise what we expect to get from these properties. So I don't know, maybe 2024 might be your year.
What about international?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I've had friends in Israel.
We've got Goldman Tracks
Goldman
in
Tracks,
here.
baby.
Condos in Nicaragua. Checks in the mail.
Yeah,
He's just getting checks in the mail.
He's a mailbox money guy.
I don't know why we used a New Zealand accent for
Nah,
a
it just
Nicaraguan
works. It's-
Oh,
apartment
is that your New
complex.
Zealand accent?
Well, hold on.
That's pretty good, actually.
It's pretty fucking good.
It's
pretty good. You were really good at the accents, actually.
Well, we'll see. Might go downhill quickly.
I don't know any U.S. people that do them because I don't know what happens tax wise. Like if you're in a foreign property, I know that the U.S. tax man always likes their cut.
Yeah.
But I've known people who live internationally to do deals in other countries. Like people in Israel started buying apartments in Barcelona. So I'd be curious to look at any deals.
I'm sure you're not getting around, Uncle Sam, but that's
Yeah.
not why. I think more so cost of entry. Maybe you have some like local, sort of expert that can lead that. Maybe there's a similar sort of like GPLP program in Nicaragua that allows you to do the same thing. Or
That'd be great.
I think what a lot of people do is they tend to want to buy their future retirement homes and they just buy them way in advance and just a lot of different things. Costa Rica is really big for that. I remember when I met Steven, we were working on something like that. Didn't you like have some interest in buying? Didn't you?
Oh, that was like
land,
that
land
was
in
like one of
Costa
those.
Rica.
So when you do marketing and advertising and you're good at it, you get pitched with like every harebrained scheme in the book.
Yeah.
Like everybody comes out of the woodworks and is like, I've got this new toenail clipper that's solar powered. What do you think about it? And
Sold.
Yeah, for sure.
You're just like, wait, why? Yeah, there was a thing where
Well,
some
there was
guy
a big craze, right? It was like
yeah,
a
he was trying to
part of-
sell some land in Costa Rica, like
Yeah.
on via Facebook ads. I don't know.
Okay.
Pass. By the way, anyone who has to advertise for investment in their apartment complex deal, just fucking
That's a
avoid.
dead giveaway.
Right.
Grant,
so I
Grant
did want-
Cardone, skip.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
fuck.
So I did want to touch on this because the 100K, even 50K entry level is high. And I think a lot of people in the community might want to get involved in this sort of asset class. But a lot of the better sort of groups are higher minimums. But then you got fucking Grant coming in being like, just give me your money.
Grant,
You
like
know, 5K,
Cardone?
10K,
Yeah.
whatever you
Oh.
got. And he's investing in every deal. And he's got VSLs, which are video sales letters, telling you how many mega millions you're going to get by investing. I mean, it's
Not
We
a-
love him, though. He's our
hardcore
exit
internet.
liquidity.
Not a
Grant
red
is-
flag at
is
all.
our
Hardcore.
exit liquidity
This
in
guy's
the
been
apartment
fully
space.
exposed, by the way, as an absolute scammer. He's always obviously, just come off as a very whatever. I don't even want to talk about him. But I think CoffeeZilla does a good job covering him and breaking down the scam. But what do you say to these like lower entry, maybe not just the Cardones, but like these groups that are advertising? Is it just that's the flag?
Yeah.
Boom, they're advertising, or their minimums are just too low? Is that a flag?
Well, Edmund mentions that Fundrise isn't terrible, and it isn't. There are some good deals on there, and I think you can thank those high minimums to kind of the regulations around these alternative investments, which require accredited investors, which is usually bullshit. But that's why these minimums exist. But you can definitely find platforms that let you invest 5, 10K, like Edmund mentioned. And like I said, they're typically not terrible. But I will say, like, if you're an amazing operator, been around for 35 years, like one of the ones I invested, average annual returns 30% across the whole portfolio. Like he's not going to go on Fundrise and raise money that way, right?
I've never heard of Fundrise. Can you tell me about it?
It's a a platform that aggregates these deals.
Specifically for these deals.
Yeah, and they'll be potentially a sponsor of the deal where they're basically raising money for equity in the deal.
So it's like a WeFunder
Kind of.
for this.
Yeah, I would rather just
Interesting.
like if you don't have the money to do it, just you probably don't have enough liquid to risk it in an illiquid asset class. So just
Yeah.
don't, because like
You could also go in with your friends.
yeah. I mean, we could create an LLC
Like we
together.
could decide that we want to go in on one of these, and
Yeah, you can
split it up.
invest as an LLC.
Yeah.
And do it that way, and then it is easier to sell off your stake if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, if you had an LLC. But yeah, in general, like if it's too much to chew, then it's probably too much to chew. So you should probably just focus on saving up more.
All right, cool. So
Yeah.
if we could wrap this for everybody, and we had to put this into like 5 bullet points. Like, just condense this whole conversation. Somebody's like, give me the TLDR. Somebody shipped some deal across my desk via Gmail. I have no idea what I'm doing. There's a PDF in front of me. Just what are the keep it super high.
Yeah, I think you want to understand the debt structure first. Like, how much risk are they taking? You want to understand the general partner. What's their track record? Have they ever had to ask for a capital call? What's their annual average return? And then you want to understand the local economy. Like, where is this going, and what is that population growing? Is there job growth? Am I also, betting an industry that I didn't know by some kind of concentrated local job economy? So I think those 3 are good.
bullets ready. Are you a podcaster or
We
something?
only had 3
He's so
bullets.
good.
I think another bullet I would consider is what's the prevailing T-bill rate? Because if you're going to try to get 7%,
Opportunity cost.
yeah, opportunity
What is
cost.
your
But
opportunity
brother,
cost?
like,
Over the last 20 years,
We're-
when has it been above 5%?
Well,
How much percentage of the
over
time?
the last 20 years, not very
okay,
often.
cut
but
that
like,
down by taxes, so we're at 4% now, and you're not including the appreciation of these properties, right? Like, typically when they sell, you could be averaging 15% plus annual return, and granted, you need that premium because it's illiquid. So
I get it. People want to have control, and they definitely don't like to lock up their money for such a long-term time horizon. To know that you can earn 5 something basically liquid is a very intriguing thing, and I get that. When that option is there, I agree. That should be part of the checklist.
and for me, it's not
Look at it.
It's not the 5.25 that I'm like going gaga over. It's the idea that I'm liquid and earning 5.25
Exactly.
because I can pile into an actual risk asset like ETH or something and probably outperform 15% over a 10-year
Here's what I
period.
understand about your comment. Don't you look at those as completely different buckets? Because the money that goes into that real estate bucket for you, I thought that's more the forever bucket. So the T-bill bucket is really the cash bucket that's waiting to be deployed into either the wealth creation bucket or the
Yeah.
wealth preservation bucket.
Yeah.
So would you actually be looking at those and comparing them and saying, well, I could earn more in T-bills, but that's supposed to be your cash bucket?
It's a good question. Honestly, I think there's 2 things that brings me to. Like, first thing is, like, when I was studying for the CFA, we had to learn about this cognitive bias called the mental accounting bias. The mental accounting bias suggests that it's a flawed way of thinking is to like silo your money off like this. It's because at the end of the day, you should look at it holistically. This is like your money. Where do you optimize your money for? It's like you shouldn't just break it off into little chunks like this. I think people often do, and I think that's okay. Honestly, I don't think that's like a huge leak. I think what it really indicates for me is that like I'm just looking for higher growth.
But you can only do that for so long, right?
Yeah, I think once I get there,
that's
then
what the framework exists for, ultimately, right?
Yeah, and I've shared my framework. I want to stay safe, and then I want to pile into risk, and then I want to ride
That's
risk
why I
up.
like it, and I like better understanding it because I look at that. I'm like, wow, man, I need to put more into certain buckets.
Yeah,
I'm overexposed in certain buckets.
All right, Amar. I was trying to segue us 10 minutes ago, but I guess
it wasn't a very good segue.
Well, apparently not.
Segue denied.
Obviously, wasn't clear.
That was a good.
Wasn't clear
session.
by the discussion on the
Wasn't
bullet
clear.
points to
Make
wrap
it a little more clear, man.
We have a meeting about this on Friday.
What if I
Give me an
segued your
email.
segue?
Give me an email in your inbox.
What if I
with
really
some,
segued your segue?
Be a review report card for you. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out how to segue from real estate to eyeball scanning for free money.
Okay.
Yeah,
Are
I
you
don't know.
asking for
Well, tell us about Worldcoin. Are you talking about Worldcoin?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Worldcoin. First of all, I'm curious. Like, I am super crypto native, so I heard about this thing the second it came out. Basically, did any of you guys know about Worldcoin when I proposed it?
Yes,
already?
but wasn't it? I
Yeah.
thought it was like a year and a half ago. Like I
No,
thought it was like ages ago.
I think it's much
Yes,
older than that.
it is
right?
old. Well,
Isn't it like 2011?
no, I think it's like a 2020 thing or 2021 thing or something.
I remember when
Um,
I remember when it came out and people were saying like, "Would you scan your eyeballs?"
Yeah, it was like a funny thing at the time, for sure. For people who don't know what the hell we're talking about, WorldCoin is this crypto kind of headed by, like, Sam Altman is behind it, right? ChatGPT guy, and
Oh, Armand's in.
some other people. I
May
don't.
2013.
2013.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Well, look who did their research, not me. Damn, that came out in 2013.
I know it doesn't make sense.
Wow. Damn. It's really forward looking. Anyway, yeah, I'd get a lot of meme value on crypto Twitter because they have this orb that you take around and you just look into it and you scan your eyeballs and then you get free money basically.
Do we know how much money?
I don't know actually.
I don't know anyone who's definitely done-
couldn't find any information on it. I actually tried to look this
Yeah,
up.
what's the dollar amount you would accept to scan the eyeballs?
I'm so glad you asked that because that was the thing I wanted to segue this with. Like, how much money would I have to pay you guys to scan your eyeballs and forever put it on the blockchain?
Hold on a second.
I'd do it for a ham sandwich.
One person here has clear. I'm certain. Who has clear?
No, not me.
I have clear.
Okay, well then
I
you're
have
already
scanned
in
my
the
I have
game,
scanned
man.
my eyeballs.
You're in the game. What's the difference?
Well,
Difference is you got to pay for clear. You don't get a ham sandwich.
I mean, the moment you introduce these types of like biometrics and fingerprints, eyeballs, it's Minority Report. Like, let's go there.
okay,
I mean,
for the record, I actually think I am more pro WorldCoin than the generalized crypto community by a lot. Like, I think in crypto, it came out, they did the eyeball scanning, and everybody was immediately like, and then obviously,
well, that's because people are sort of like at a loss with what to do about the inevitable future that exists. This is so inevitable. This is literally
what is inevitable?
the title
all
of Kevin Kelly's
our-
book. The Inevitable was all about the loss. A huge chunk of it was about the loss of privacy, the end of privacy. And we need to accept that and live in that world and better regulate that world and think about how we want to build products in that world rather than fighting against it. Because ultimately, like, and thinking about how do we prevent totalitarian, authoritarian societies from taking over and controlling us and monitoring us. It's inevitable. It is the angle and the trajectory at which technology is evolving, and fighting it seems to be useless. The only option seems to be, I mean, I was talking to Yaniv about this the other day. It's like, move to a farm. That's it. It's like, you're either going to be part of this society or you got to go live off the grid. And I think that's like where the road is going to fork, is people are going to have to decide, like, I'm either going to accept these technologies, and sure, you can be diligent and conscious of which ones you opt into. But I mean, all it takes is like the way that passwords leak. All it takes is one password to leak, and then you're gone. Like your
Okay,
your
but
information
if I have to
is
devil's
gone.
advocate you, why does the listener out there have to accept the inevitability that their eyeball will be scanned and then put onto the blockchain?
Because if WorldCoin's not going to do it, someone else is. It's inevitable.
But why?
You think
why
we're going to
is that?
stop the whole thing from happening?
Well, do you want to get into the conversation about the proof of humanity and why that would be beneficial? Because
I think there's a lot of interesting threads behind WorldCoin.
I just want to say,
actually,
there's no difference to me between WorldCoin and Clear. That's what I'm trying to say.
okay,
It's
so
already happening. It's already there. Oh, you're just trying to prevent it from happening in crypto. You're trying to prevent
well,
it
let
from
me ask
happening
you
in
this:
AI.
how much would I have to pay you to scan your eyeballs for WorldCoin?
I don't know what that really means. I mean, I've already scanned my eyeballs for Clear.
No, imagine I give you the orb. I'm like,
Yeah.
here's the WorldCoin orb, and imagine it's not even WorldCoin. I'm just going to send you a dollar value of stable coins.
yeah,
Like,
like
how much would it have to be
here's
for you
75
to
bucks. Would you do it?
What
look
do
into
I
the orb?
get? I don't just money.
You get money.
Just money.
No,
75 bucks?
I don't need that.
Okay,
Well, how much money?
$75,000.
I mean, you wouldn't do it for $100,000.
Well, okay, but there's so many underlying questions. Do I Like, what is
You
that
just
going to lead
poo-pooed
to?
it saying
No,
like,
no.
oh, I already did clear. Of course I would do it.
Right, because clear gives me a clear benefit. I pass the line. I
Right. The
get to
benefit is you
plane
get
faster.
money.
Okay,
Yeah. Just
but
like
getting money is not the same as being able to say like, okay, fine, getting money, I'll take $10 million. But does that
Okay.
mean am
Does
I
anybody
still
have a
safe?
serious answer, Eric? How much
Wait,
would
that
you
is my serious answer.
You if I offered you $1 million to look into Worldcoin Orb, you
you
wouldn't
wouldn't
take
do
it?
it. You would
But
say no. I need 10.
I mean, I probably would, but I'm trying to get to the point, trying to get to the root of your question, which is like, well, what does that entail? Is there some sort of, are you going to pull the rug from under me as soon as I do that? Because then no.
What do you mean pull the rug from under you?
Can I trust this organization? Is it going to be used in a malicious way?
Right, I think this is a fair question.
I'm using a hypothetical to simplify it. I'm giving you
know, but
I
stable
agree, but I
Not
think he's
simple.
like playing out the scenario. I think this is a cool exercise. Like under this hypothetical, we could play out like the pros and cons with like scanning the eyeball as well as like, him taking $1 million or not. Like what does he expose himself to if he accepts the $1 million?
If there's no exposure, I'll take 10K. Give me
Right.
10K. I'll give you my eyeballs. But that has to be part of the equation.
So what's the downside?
What's the downside?
Look, the pitch from Worldcoin is that there's some sort of like zero knowledge proof type thing going on where like, yes, we have your biometric data, but like we can't do anything with it. And like, I don't know, it's in this kind of magical privacy world where like nobody can access this information or do anything with it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a trust me bro thing. And I think that has to be built into your premium. Like if you really thought that was true, then like, yeah, what do I get? Like $100? Sure, I'll have a dinner tonight.
True
And
that my
I'll do it.
keys were secure, and I was one firmware update away from.
I'm a little sketched out by it because they're talking about we have a decentralized currency, and at some point we'll decentralize the identity portion of this project. But like I think what we all like the first thing when you saw the orb, it just gave you these authoritarian vibes, right? Like
super.
It was like literally Black
like
Mirror.
exactly.
It was literally staring into it. It was literally a photo of a guy staring into a mirror. It was like a shiny orb that reflected it.
And so it's
so bad.
and I think Tunsky mentioned this, like as soon as AI came out, I was like, okay, well, if this information becomes available, like what could an AI use this, either a person behind an AI or any technical person use this data set for? I don't know. And I think that's what scares me because I can't really like put my finger on what the threat is. And
the real value is now, and I think the reason that people talk about it in a positive way is what it can do for AI, not how AI can use it maliciously. In a world of deep fakes and not knowing what reality is anymore, and like needing to prove that I'm human, then I can see a lot of value in that. Like,
yeah, can we
that use case?
Yeah,
is
let's pause for 1 second. There's two main reasons I think Worldcoin has for existing. One is the idea that Bitcoin wants to be this sort of world currency. And it's not, because like you get this phenomenon where early adopters just like get in, they get rich, and then they just hoard it.
Yeah.
And nobody spends it. And like you can see this in Bitcoin. It's obviously
playing out
happening
today. Yeah.
This is like one of the delusions of Bitcoiners, right? So the idea behind Worldcoin is that, well, we give it to everybody on the planet. You scan your eyeballs. It's Sybil resistant, so like a Sybil attack was something that people do with the airdrops, right? Where they like pretend to be like 1 million people, but it's one person. And if you scan your eyeballs, like, well, we're only giving the coins to one set of eyeballs each. So in that regard, it sort of makes sense. And the idea is to make this world currency that's distributed to, I think he wants to give it to 1 billion people within 2 years. And then everybody has this. It's fairly like and I get that. Like if you could make a currency and just airdrop it to 1 billion people and provably airdrop it to 1 billion people and be like, that's it. And now I think it also runs on like optimism, right? I think it runs on optimism and they do some stuff off chain. So there's like no fees for transactions. So again, more like trust me, bro. But the idea is everybody has the currency. It's fairly distributed and you can use it because it doesn't cost like $38 to send like $1 to somebody, which I get. So that's one of the reasons for the existence of it. The other is what Armand was going into before, which I think is now becoming more interesting, much more interesting than it was in 2013, which is this idea of proof of humanity. Like how in the digital world do we prove that there is like a human behind the screen doing something, right? And not an AI. Is that the more interesting idea of the two to you?
Yes, It's definitely the more interesting one. It might be the thing we need.
I
Yes.
think I think I get where you're going, and I just want to say that, like, with proof of humanity, I think what it unlocks is what Kevin Kelly is looking for with cryptography, which is like,
Yeah.
how do you expand this beyond currency? And it's like, well, I think proof of humanity allows, like,
Exactly.
it enables it to become voting, it enables it to become identity, it enables it to become a driver's license, like all these things that require sort of like a proof of humanity. This thing could potentially provide.
And think about all the people in the world. This is one of their pitches, is like that don't have proper identification. You know, refugees. There's so many examples, right?
That's I actually didn't think
So,
about that.
yeah,
So
it's a big use
Yeah.
case. And so in a world where things start to get mixed up, your digital identity starts to get really foggy. Your I mean, even imagine it going as far as, like, for example, one of the things we have is like identity theft is a problem. But imagine that concept 10x. Like, everyone's identity is just fucked. Your credit score's fucked, your identity's fucked. Everything about your identity is lost and it's gray. So what are you going to do to really prove who you are and be able to say, like, this is me, and not some, you know, scammer, or not some AI version of a scammer that's being run by a little kid scammer? Like, there's 7 of you and you have to prove which one is you, or you lose your passport, or you lose these like physical documents. It just becomes more and more necessary. Stephen, do you think that instead of the eyes, we could use the taint as a scam? Community question.
Community question.
I love that our community is not afraid to ask the big questions.
The elephant in the room, right?
and Nick
deep
adds,
questions.
and Nick, I mean, this is a brilliant. I mean, are all taints as unique as snowflakes? I mean, I think that's a
How would
wonderful
we know?
question.
Well, we've
I
all
would-
seen Armand's. It looks exactly like mine. I can confirm that.
Are they all the same? No, but I do think this is the interesting part. Marty said something interesting. He's like, okay, you know, just to address, is like, you know,
Wait,
how
let me
can
guess.
I-
Marty doesn't like Worldcoin. Let me guess. Marty
No,
doesn't
Marty's
want to stare into
excited.
the
Marty's
orb.
excited. He wants to put the little tinfoil action, a little mezcal. You
Oh, I know.
mezcaleria.
Marty's excited to tinfoil about
Right.
Worldcoin. I just know Marty is not scanning his eyeballs.
Sure,
I know one
definitely
thing
not.
about
But
Marty.
like, I was mad at Ledger, not because I think they're two very different things, and yet at the same time, I want to clarify. Like, I will take all these different sides of arguments, not because I actually believe what I'm saying, oftentimes, but more for the
Yes,
sake
you're,
of
you're stress
conversation.
testing
Yeah, exactly.
ideas.
So wow, that
Holy.
that is a half a glass.
Eric just
That is
poured
a
Nick
half
about 6
a
ounces
glass.
of mezcal.
Sorry, guys. There's none left.
I was gonna offer to take some, but you seem quite fine. You'll be
Yeah,
good.
he's eager.
Yeah, he's eager.
I'm not so eager.
We've made it through not even half the podcast. There's a
Yeah.
1/5 of the bottle left.
So look, my problem with Ledger was not Ledger. My problem was that at the underlying, the fabric of the technology that we thought was the most secure path to storing our crypto was not actually as secure as we believed it to be. And now there's all this conversation from the CTO of Ledger and working on firmware updates, but it doesn't seem to be directly addressing the core issue either. And it just seems like they're continuing to like try to show they're listening to their users, but not actually getting to the root of the issue. Maybe just like cooling it down and blowing it off and pushing it out and then bringing the feature out later. God knows what they're up to. I think that was very revealing. This to me is a completely different thing. We're dealing with a situation where I find the inevitability of our privacy being lost to be inevitable. Like, it's just an inevitable thing. I'm not happy about that. That is not something that I'm like, man, I would love to live in a world where I have absolutely no privacy. Everything is listening to me all the time. And my eyeballs, my ears. I mean, Minority Report is that world, right? I'm not excited about that. But I do believe that if optimists out there and technologists out there shape the technology to be utilized in positive ways that can solve real problems, trends work as all technology works as a double-edged sword. This technology and all technologies will be used in some authoritarian societies. There will be hell on earth, and there will be people that will be living in situations that are so ugly and so terrifying, like that Mockingbird movie, right? Or any other dystopian movie you've ever seen.
the Hunger Games.
Hunger Games. Oh, I always call it
Mockingjay.
Mockingbird. Mockingjay. Hunger Games is real, but but so is a beautiful society of a beautiful egalitarian thriving society. That all trends move in one direction, but also address two sides of a coin. And I think that's what we have to get comfortable with. Personally, I think that you're going to live in a world with no privacy, and it's going to be used in ways against you that you are going to hate, depending on where you are and the level of rights that you have. But in other societies, it's going to be beautiful, and that's what we have to watch out for. And that's why being a participant matters. That's why having discussions matters. Like having these discussions and creating a sense of awareness so that you know how to vote and who to talk to and how to share these ideas matters. That's why I like this shit. Because if we didn't have this, then we would just be dumb, blind 1984 society, and that's what you have to protect against. So,
And
I just wanted to address that.
Yeah, no, and to bring it home and support your point, like your thing reminded me of a time when the internet became a thing. My dad was like very into early technology, but also at the same time like very distrustful of it, and still to this day like does not have a cell phone. But he was just like, there's no way I'm ever putting my, he was really into computers, but he's like, there's no way I'm ever putting my credit card into a computer. He would never type his actual date of birth into anything, give out his actual, he was just like, nope, it's going to be an idea. And to us now, that's just normal. We do that. We don't think about it. And we think of what my dad was doing 20 years ago as being like quaint and silly. And like, maybe that's how Armand's grandkids will think about scanning their eyeballs.
Right.
And they'll listen to this pod and be like, it's so weird that they felt so odd about
I do agree
scanning their
that
eyeballs.
like not participating and slowing down the amount of information you put out there is probably good. It's probably net good in the short term. Like we have a mutual friend who's very private, who tries to never put his information out there. And I think it's probably net good for him. And he's 5 years ahead of us, right? Like where all of our information is going to be out there. It's going to get leaked multiple times and all these negative things will happen. But you also get to participate in wonderful things. And so it's just a decision every human being has to make.
All right. Well, speaking of decisions every human being ever has to
Ooh,
I
a good
like this
segue.
way.
pretty soon, we're going to have to vote on a president. And one particular candidate has been making a big splash recently. He's
The
been
conspiracy
doing.
theorist?
Some have labeled him a conspiracy
Marty?
theorist.
Is it Marty? Marty's the presidential candidate?
It's not Marty. It's not Marty, but he would be very entertaining up on stage. I have no doubt about that. We are talking, of course, about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's been making all the rounds doing the podcasts, and in a way that I really respect. Like he's going on like hour two, like the All In episode, I think was 2 hours, and he sat there and talked through all of his stuff. He's gone on, like Breaking Points, with Crystal and Sagar, and ran into some opposition there. But he's willing to talk to people and to be in long format. And I think he's said some super interesting stuff. We haven't talked about him much yet, so I wanted to do a temperature check with you guys, see how you guys are feeling about him. Is anybody here thinking of possibly voting for him? I would lead
Hold
with.
on. Because
What
hold
do you
on.
mean between him and Joe Biden?
Because hold on,
As if I had
I'm
a
so
choice.
left curve about this. Like I don't follow this stuff like you guys do.
Oh, okay.
So,
What do you need to know?
So when you guys even first broached this topic, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But then I listened to the All In pod, and that's all that I've consumed on this
Mhm.
gentleman. And
So Eric and I are going to be on one side of the conversation here, just to clarify. That's all I have as well.
okay, so like, and first of all, like you guys know that I don't watch mainstream media. I don't like consume news.
Same.
Like I like policies, discussions to know where I land on them. I have very little interest in knowing where anybody else lands on them. Like this is not my.
Well, you sound like a good representation of like 80% of America.
Okay,
so
no,
I think
yeah,
this is actually quite useful.
Yeah. So here, let me give you a brief rundown of my emotional logical journey as I heard this man speak on All In. Okay. First thing I heard was like the oldest guy I've ever heard in my life talking. Like I was.
Did you know he's actually only 69?
Yeah. So I was listening to the audio as I'm like on a
I
treadmill.
thought he was 89.
And I thought like
99.
because David Sachs, I think, introduced him and he goes like, hey, so here's a 69-year-old man, like, and he goes, hello.
Okay, so
But I think
so
he
you
has, like,
should
a-
know
like
a
before we go any
condition.
farther.
Do you know why?
No.
He has a
Oh.
speaking condition.
Okay, so when I heard that, I was like, oh, you're making a joke because of he mentioned your age, and then he kept talking like that. I'm like,
But I actually think this is something he's going to have to deal with.
Oh,
Yes,
for sure.
I agree because people react to it.
Yeah.
He how did he got that from a
He got it.
he got it from like so did he get it from like a is that why he's like anti
I don't know the source, but I think it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 years ago. He came down with a condition, a disease that makes it hard for him to speak, almost like his vocal cords kind of convulse while he's speaking.
Yeah.
And he's very
quiver.
open to talking about it. But I think it's going to be like, you know, the moderator's going to ask RFK, like, hey, do you want to speak about what your
I think it's
condition.
important because
And
there's
then
a
they're
lot
going to
of
go to Joe
people.
Biden and be like, would you like to explain yours?
Well, I thought it was important for me to understand because we often make fun of our current president for like the way that he speaks. So nobody's like out of bounds, right? Like I tend to be a guy who doesn't like to make fun of anybody except for my friends. But like when I heard this guy speak, I was like, well, this is unelectable. You know, like,
I had
immediately.
the same thought. Like I
I
don't
had to
think you're
Google it.
wrong for thinking that. And I knew he had the condition, and I sort of, I mean, I guess I don't really know why he is, but I
I don't
sort
think
of
it's
knew
a
it.
big problem.
But like,
I think
I
they can
knew
just-
people were gonna think.
I
that.
think they can just like borrow like a voice and AI generate all his speeches and just like have a little voiceover.
Okay, so that was what I just want to say. That was my first impression, and that was like, you know, that
Yeah.
that I think
which
that's
is
going to be
a normal human.
it was like a
first impression,
shocking
yeah.
that's going to be a
reaction,
lot
for
of
sure.
people's first impressions, I think.
Yeah.
So that was my first. But then when I heard him speak, first of all, I want to give credit to a podcast that I have like lost respect for over time. Like the All In podcast, I just kind of like stopped listening to it.
Yeah,
But when they interviewed him,
this is just a huge ego fest.
it was it's an ego fest. Thank
It's
you.
just ridiculous.
It's a huge ego fest, and these guys are not likable. I don't think they like each
No.
other.
No, they don't.
And
They-
that's
they
like-
don't like.
That's like what I captured
Wait,
from
you
their.
They're
don't
not
find
friends.
Shamoth Palahapatia to be likable.
They're not
So
friends.
weird.
I think it's great. I love it. I
So
love the podcast.
It's almost like
It's like listening to Secession.
It's like- it's
not.
yeah,
even
it's
better.
cringeworthy.
It's not real.
It's cringeworthy in how much they like actually hate each other underneath the surface.
It couldn't be more obvious.
And okay, so like I just like stopped listening to All In because I found him like
Negative.
not really educating me that much, and then B just like really not entertaining.
Yeah.
So
I like Freeberg,
so
and
Yeah,
I like.
oh my
Sachs.
God.
I like them individually.
hold
though.
on. I think
I'm a
we
big Freeberg.
we
Everybody
align.
likes Freeberg.
Freeberg
Freeberg's cool.
is the most educational out of all of them.
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
I love
But
his
I'm a
little
big.
science corner.
I really like Sachs. I know he's not super popular, but like
I
really
find
think.
Sachs to be like
I-
very cringy.
No, I like him. I like him.
Okay, so as the conversation went on, the interview went on, I was like, oh, they're actually asking him great questions, and I thought those questions were amazing, and the conversation was great because RFK Jr. was playing ball, like he wasn't shying away from many of the questions. You guys brought up in our like meeting that like, hey, give this a listen. Like he doesn't shy away, and on the things that he doesn't shy away from, he doesn't like hide from it. He's just like, I got to learn more about that, and I found that to be just like a breath of fresh air. I thought like he talked about.
And can I comment on that?
Yeah, talk about that.
So you guys mentioned it before I listened to the episode, and you was like, "Yeah, it stood out the way he did that." So when I went into the episode, I was expecting it to be in this way where it's like a little contrived, where it's like he's trying to make sure that he comes off as this scientific, wise sort of person who doesn't have the answer to all things and needs to go think about them. But it was never said in the same way.
Right.
Every time he said it, it was like in a different context, in a different manner. He didn't always say like, well, I need to go think about that. It was just like, sometimes he said, I don't know enough about it. Sometimes he said he needs to dig deeper into it. Sometimes he said he doesn't feel comfortable answering that. Sometimes he said it would be incorrect to answer the question. That there was the war question where he said like, what would you
Taiwan.
do with Taiwan?
Yeah.
And the answer was amazing.
He goes, well,
The answer was
strategically,
beautiful.
it doesn't benefit you
I mean,
to show your
that's every
cards.
politician's answer, to be clear.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I,
No,
I
Joe
plus
Biden
one-
has said the opposite.
Well,
Joe
Joey-
Biden has said,
Yeah, because he had a
people
cognitive
get,
slip.
Well, people get mad at him because they're like, you're not supposed to do that. That's like 101.
That's the
is you-
strategy
Yeah,
I-
to not show the cards,
my-
and he showed the cards.
+1 to just say the way that he did that was unlike any politician I have ever heard.
yeah,
And
so
it was very genuine.
So I want to give the floor back to the guys who know this individual well and knows policies. Like, I honestly am sitting here. I don't know if he's running on a Democratic or Republican platform. Like, if he's like, I think Sachs said he's a Democrat, but if he's a Democrat, then he's not running because Biden's gonna be president
No,
again.
he's
He's
there's a
pulling it
primary.
like almost 20% right now.
But
Yeah.
like, the incumbent doesn't get.
Let me
Well,
go
the
next.
incumbent
Let me
isn't
go next,
usually a
'cause
dead guy.
I'll also be in this like same pretty ignorant camp, and then you guys can actually add
Well,
some
no,
color.
I want to hear what you guys have to say. I
Yeah.
want to, because you guys probably
Look.
reflect what most of the people listening are thinking right
Yeah,
now.
so I'm like, I don't even know. Like, I guess I walked away from the whole thing, but just being like sad because I like the guy. I walked away from it saying like, I'd love someone like that to be president. I'd love to have something other than
really?
Biden and Trump.
So I had a different conclusion, but I want you to keep going.
And every time I'm exposed to a political candidate who's like actually refreshing and interesting, I get a little sad because I know they have no chance. I hate the system. I hate the fact that this guy who's refreshing and anti-establishment and actually seems to speak in a way that is not like robotic. And so one great thing that Chamath said was he applied a framework to like the two types of candidates. I liked that. I was like, okay, good job.
What was the framework?
It was just like the puppet and the genuine. Like, you're either a puppet for the establishment or you're kind of like a genuine radical type. And I shouldn't put Trump in that category, but he put Trump in that category as like you're genuine in terms of your authenticity, which I actually do think Trump is. And I put RFK Jr. in that same camp, and it's like, it's not the time. He's running against an incumbent. There's no chance. So I just walk away from these things going like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't want to get my hopes up. So it's just a simple response to that.
So-
but I felt that while he had some like, I thought he brought some great conversation and courage to the COVID conversation. I thought that was really good. I know that the All In guys also like disputed and got lost in a little bit of like some of the stats and how he coupled certain studies together and just like put it all in one bucket. But his openness to being wrong was beautiful. He was just like, just show me and let's have a conversation and let me understand where I've misstepped and let's have a conversation and don't just label me a conspiracy theorist. I thought he was really refreshing, and I've literally never heard him speak before.
So can I ask both of you, one of his main like pieces of his platform is anti-war, right? Like, he obviously doesn't
bring it home.
He wants to bring it home, but he looks at it as like the wars are a cultural weakness. There are economic weakness. There are geopolitical weakness. How did that argument settle on you guys?
That was one thing that stood out to me up front, because I was like one of the earlier parts of their conversation. And again, consider me middle left curve, okay? And consider me a guy jogging, listening to this guy in my ears who sounds like he's Gandalf's grandfather. Like, and he's like, no, I just wouldn't have any wars. And I'm like, of course you wouldn't, dude. You get run over. Like, you're a chump.
No,
okay,
that's
so-
not fair.
No. Okay, so that was my initial reaction.
Okay,
But
because of his voice.
oh, he
look,
sounds
what
old
Eric
wants
is
to
saying,
de-escalate.
what Eric is saying is honest. Like, this is how human beings react to political candidates. That's
Yeah.
why when like Michael Bloomberg was running, everybody was like, he's like a dwarf, like making jokes about his height. 'cause that's how
no. What he's saying is
people react.
honest.
let me
I'm just
keep
saying-
going. Let me keep going, and then I'll like add something fresh to the mix. So, he's an attorney by trade, and he was saying like,
an
no, I would
environmental lawyer.
I would
Yeah.
like legislate out of wars. I'm like, well, I don't know that that's going to work either. Okay. So, I mean, with the war thing, I just thought like it sounds easier to say than to execute. I don't believe it. I think ultimately where I want to bring something new to the mix, like where I landed on him broadly was like, I think a president should, there's like two stages of presidency. There's campaigning and then there's the administration.
Right.
I don't think he's that electable. I think he would be, if you guys were to run and win the presidency, I think you should have him as an advisor, because I think he's
a good executor, but maybe not a good campaigner. Like, he's a good executive.
I think he'd be a great advisor. I think he like has a lot of great knowledge, and he like demonstrated that very clearly in the interview. Like, his knowledge is awesome, but like if I'm having that reaction, what's most people going to think?
I
man?
think this is where actually he might gain a lot of popularity very quickly if he can get in front of audiences. Because what he's saying is exactly what people are ready to hear right now. Anti-establishment is the answer. I honestly believe that if the conspiracy theorist in me is like, there's no way he's going to get a platform, there's no way he's going to get in front of the right people to be able to campaign, there's no way the DNC is going to give him a chance. But if he can throw a wrench in the whole thing and like cause a ruckus, I don't know how that works. Maybe then at that point there could be a chance, but like I just don't see it in this stage, in this part where like, Biden is
Right.
just serving a second term. I could see it in 4 years.
Sure.
Well, let me throw
I
it back
wish
to
he
you.
was running in 4 years.
Let me throw it back to you, Nick. Do you think he would arbitrate his way out of the Ukraine-Russia war?
Can I withhold for a second?
Okay.
Because I like these asking questions. I just have one more question, and I will answer that one. For you guys in particular, he mentioned some things that most people classify as conspiracy theories. So I want to know if his arguments resonated for you. So he mentioned a few things. Like he mentioned the CIA had something to do with his uncle's death.
Yeah.
And that,
assassinated him.
yeah, and that the intelligence agencies are kind of like the tails wagging the dog, in the sense of like they're essentially feeding leads to the military industrial complex to like,
Yes.
here's some more wars for you to start. There's that one. There's that industry is in bed with kind of administration
The revolving
branches.
door is just like,
So that's
clear
two.
as day.
And then third one was about vaccines. And so I just want to know, did the argument he make can convince you, mildly convinced, completely convinced on vaccines
So that's what
and
I'm
on the
saying.
intelligence agencies?
This
Like,
is
was
the
it, did it hit
truth
home to you? though?
This is what the majority of people, I believe, want to hear.
Yeah, I think I was already
I already
sort of on
believed
board
those
with that,
things.
Okay.
and that was like finally
was
a
like,
voice saying
There's
yes.
a political candidate saying these things. Like, that's what was interesting to me, is like the courage that required, knowing that like most people that say these things get canceled or were getting canceled, is huge.
Yeah.
And this is Robert Kennedy Jr. saying these things. So to me, it was very enlightening and not enlightening. It was very admirable to hear somebody say that. So yeah, I mean, did it resonate? Yeah, it was real. It was real as fuck. He's the kind of person that would be in this podcast and talking about the things that we talk about all the time, and we'd be like, yeah, Robert,
I feel like it'd
exactly.
be great on this pod.
It'd be like, exactly, Robert. Like we said that. So like he's saying,
Yeah,
the
what do you think
things
about
that we have
taints,
already
Robert?
said.
We'll leave that outside the presidential interview series. Yeah.
I think that like if you wanted, you could go and you could pick at his arguments and you could find things to correct.
Yes.
But then that's just like cheap. Anybody can do that. I can do that with Neil deGrasse Tyson. I can do that with Sam Harris. Anybody can do that to
strawman
anybody.
anyone.
You can do that to anybody. But generally speaking, everything that he said was directionally something like positive and reinforcing of values and beliefs that people have today. After everything that everyone went through with the pandemic, one of the biggest failures, one of the saddest things we've ever experienced. By the way, the thing that I thought that he said was most interesting to me is like his conversation directly at the debt, directly at the budget. The economy is a disaster. It's not working. It's getting worse. And he had the numbers to back it up. And quite honestly, the way that he delivered those numbers sequentially with like so many beautiful examples really hits hard. I thought it was a very good argument.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Like, I thought the content of his message was great, but don't you think there's like to be electable, you need like content, and then you need like the vehicle of delivery, right? Like the vehicle of delivery is like a big part of electability. Like I think it behooves you to be like a tall white male, confident, like younger-ish, or at least seeming younger. And this guy didn't like strike me as electable based on like what I heard on this podcast, even though the content of his message was, I thought, incredible.
I think that is an old idea. Like the old idea is that politicians are supposed to be presidential, electable. And I think what we found is that people just want real. I think we found that with Trump. And I think that Trump is not presidential, not regal in this like way that he speaks at all. I mean, Steven dropped a meme yesterday, is like, or Rizzy did, or whatever. It's like, what does he say?
Same guy.
Huh? Yeah.
Same guy.
It totally is your alter
You're a
ego.
Rizzy alt.
I
You
knew
have
you
an
were
alt,
Rizzy.
dude.
No, really, what it was Steven needed a break because he was running two accounts
Rizzy's actually my alt account.
and spending like 10 hours on
I
our
got
Twitter.
tired. That's why he left the Discord.
No, so my point is, I actually think that what's more important than like appearance now is, do you speak to the ideas that represent the collective psyche of society today that represents enough people? I think society's ready for that.
And I think you bring up a good point, and we brought up this point before. I think Steven's mentioned this point before, but I think the alfalfa in overviewing a political landscape is that it's no longer left and right. That is a false framework. It's 4 quadrants, right? You do have left and right, but now we have this like kind of like, we can put them in, label them very different ways, but establishment and anti-establishment, you could view it as authoritarian, libertarian, I think. But like there's clearly 4 quadrants of political candidates and political viewpoints. And I think if you view that, politics in that framework, it makes a little more sense to you on why, Trump does well, and why, there's a difference between Joe Biden, who's the most popular podcaster on the right. He's very like anti-establishment. Ben Shapiro, right? Or sorry, I should probably do a different comparison, but like
I don't know if I would call Ben Shapiro anti-establishment, but
you don't think so? Who would be the
there is a large faction of
Tucker?
the right that like Tucker is more anti. Like, there's a large faction of the right that would consider like Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire to be sort of like conservative ink.
All right,
like
so
this sort
let's
of
call
like
it Mitch
establishment
McConnell
of
and
the
Ben Shapiro, right? They're
Mitch-
both
Mitch McConnell's very establishment-y,
hardcore conservatives, but like they're very different on the establishment, non-establishment spectrum. So anyway, I think that's an important point to bring up.
Let's go to you. Like let's understand this at a let's go from elementary school, please, to middle school, and then maybe take us to our PhD
drink up,
here.
buddy. Drink up.
Eric's pour is almost gone. So, well, I think the beauty of this thing, first of all, is that he did a 2-hour podcast, and why haven't we heard of
Did
him
you
before?
notice he didn't want to rap?
No.
He was fine.
Do
He's
you know
like, I'm
why?
good for time.
Do you know why? And I know Steven knows why, but like he did interview with ABC like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks prior.
He got chopped up.
He got
Exactly.
hatchet job.
Hatchet
That
job.
was just
I mean, they literally
disgrace,
changed his
honestly.
whole message essentially.
Of course.
And so that's typical. That's probably why DeSantis launched on Twitter Spaces today, because he knew he wasn't going to get rugged except by Twitter technology and Twitter servers, which it did rug the Spaces. But in any case, like first
I
of
thought
all,
Twitter was dead.
it might be coming back.
Oh, dude,
It's very not dead.
definitely being facetious.
So I don't know. I think that's a first standpoint, is that the media hasn't given someone like this a voice, and I don't think they'll necessarily give him a voice. Back to your point about, is he electable? Will he actually be on a debate stage with Joe Biden? I want to see that. I think 20%.
They
I think
won't give it to him.
10% deserves it, and the DNC has
He has
explicitly
way
said,
more than 10%.
Yeah, he does. He
Yeah.
does.
What do you need?
They're gonna
What
have a
is-
hard
what is
time
the, like,
keeping him off.
What do they need to do to what does he need to do to get on?
Well-
I mean, at 20%, there's no way they'd be able to keep him off.
No, they've
like,
already said-
they change rule. Like they changed the rules.
Yeah, it's like getting on the New York Times bestseller list.
I mean, you saw what they did to Bernie. They absolutely just like shoved Bernie off a cliff,
Yeah.
right? They
Like
Yeah.
the
they assassinated
DNC
him
is
for sure.
clearly playing to, we want Biden to face Trump again because we know that's probably the only candidate he can beat. We have a playbook for it. He doesn't have to do anything.
Well, not only that, they just know they can control Biden. Like they don't want an RFK in there because they can't control. And like RFK is good. He's like a Trump with a D in front of his name, but like without a lot of the things you don't like, right? Like he would go in and
Dude,
just blow up a lot of stuff.
one thing we didn't say is I just admired how much the guy spoke like a genuine human being.
like a person.
Like,
He's very
he was
authentic,
a human,
yeah.
and he had heart when he answered the trans question. I thought the answer was fair and great.
He's like, this is hard.
This is hard,
Yeah.
and I have like a daughter and a niece, and this is what she's gone through, and yet at the same time, I believe in like bodily autonomy, and these are hard things, and this is the best answer that I've come up with. And he had opinions, but he also knew where to draw the line and not have an opinion.
Right.
And I think that's important. It's like the president doesn't need to have an opinion on everything.
Exactly.
He doesn't need to have an answer on everything. And what they all do is they come up with bullshit.
If he has an
to
answer on
signal.
everything, he's full of shit.
They're full of
obviously. Like you
'Cause
can't have an
you
answer on
can't.
everything. Yeah.
Who has
But
formulated an
political
opinion on
training has
everything?
taught you to just spin what you don't know.
Yeah,
So
and
like you
speak to
can't
a base.
you can't answer I don't know. You have to spin it.
Because otherwise you're not signaling to which base should stand up for you. If you say I'm not sure on that, I need to go do my homework on vouchers, it's like, well, if that's my like single issue,
Right.
then you don't have my vote.
And maybe when debates come, he'll be prepared for that.
I agree.
I hope there's
But it
a
was just
stage where
refreshing.
this will happen. I don't know what Biden's going to do, but I know the DNC is trying to insulate him from RFK and not propose any debates. They've already said on like the major news shows there will not be debate. The president is the leader of our party. He will be the presidential candidate, and there's no exceptions. They've like already drawn a line,
This is where I'm
and it's
like
bullshit.
sad about the whole thing. It's just like, what's the point of getting excited?
Can we go down to the issues a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Please.
the war thing kind of hit home with me. I mean, we're a generation who's seen not big superpower wars, but we've seen us getting involved and entangled in kind of forever wars. And man, there was one point he said we spent $8 trillion in Iraq and got essentially nothing for it, except we
Less
destabilized
than nothing.
democracy
Less
in
than
Europe.
nothing.
We killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein did.
That was that was one of the quotes.
Woo!
Said we destabilized democracy in Europe by, ejecting so many refugees to surrounding countries. And we turned Iraq into an Iranian satellite, essentially, which is the whole purpose of like, we did not want that
A
to
strong
happen.
Iraq was good for, the neighbor.
Right.
Iran.
And so his point is, in terms of military, we should withdraw from the world. We should make it extremely expensive and deadly to try to attack America. Fortress America is a term he used. And we should project our economic power more than our military power, which is essentially what China's doing. Like they're projecting their economic power as like potentially the largest economic power in terms of GDP in the future, and they're signing trade deals and they're pushing more diplomatic power. So that aligns with me as this generation, like that we all subscribe to, just because of we've seen
But that's
what happens.
not that different than what Trump said and did.
Correct.
Either.
So he's very much in line with Trump on
Well,
certain
arguably,
things.
if you're Peter Zeihan, you're saying a lot of the last handful of presidents have been moving in this direction.
Zion's
So
pretty pro
This
Ukraine
is
war
just
though, right?
More,
I don't know his stance. I just know his analysis.
But he does have some overlap with what you're talking about for sure.
Do you think he oversimplified some of the solutions between China and Taiwan and Ukraine and Russia?
Who, Peter?
No, sorry, RFK.
I think he answered them with the time that was allotted. I think he could have gone deeper for sure.
I don't know. It's kind of like a yes or no. It's like a yes and no thing. Like we don't have to be over there. I think a lot of the, like they tell you that we have to be there because like XYZ, but I think a lot of the XYZ was like manufactured in the first place.
100%.
And what I really like about RFK is that he hones into, I think, like two of the most problematic like areas of capture in American politics, and that's like the military industrial complex and like big pharma. And like if you look back on the last 10 years and what's really been just absolutely wreaking havoc, it's kind of those two things, or 20 years, call it. I don't know if it was on the All. Did he have the quote about how like on the All In podcast about how big pharma has been like a net negative in the last like 15 or 20 years or something in terms of life expectancy in the United States?
He mentioned that, but he also mentioned that we've set up incentives for them that like no upstream testing, no downstream risk, and no advertising to push a product.
Yeah, he did such a good job, I thought, of communicating how these government bureaucracies, like the NIH, for example, like the incentive structure, like he speaks to me really well because I really do align with a lot of this sort of like, there's a lot of like economic right wing ideas that I align with. Like I like a lot of the stuff that's at the core of what like like a Milton Friedman or like a Thomas Sowell says, right? And I do believe a lot in incentives, right? But he does a good job of like talking to that type of brain and then spinning it to like a left-wing mindset, right? Like he says like, look, fossil fuels are actually the most economically inefficient and expensive things that exist. And he's like, they only exist because the market is distorted. We're taking all of these costs and we're putting them on these people and allowing these other people to extract profits. And that's not the free market. And that's a good argument for having government to go in and control these things. And I was like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That really spoke to me in a way that I think a lot of people haven't spoken to me before. And he described how like the people who sit on the NIH like have all of these incentives to allow these drugs to go through. They're like equity holders in some of the patents, and like just the stuff is like unbelievable. And he connects it to a lot of the stuff that happened with COVID. And it's like it's no wonder that all this stuff happened, right? Like just follow the incentives and I'll show you the outcome. Who said that? Is that Charlie? Is that Charlie Munger?
Charlie
quote?
Munger.
Yeah. It's like one of the truest quotes that exists.
On the COVID thing, the stats about how other countries dealt with COVID is staggering. I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I think he nailed COVID. Like
Nailed it, right?
In like he said what I was feeling was
Wanting to hear for so long
was that we actually have violated a lot of our freedoms in terms of locking down small businesses, which I
we
thought was
printed money. We ticketed people for surfing,
yeah. I mean
pulled them out of the water and put them inside the homes to become radical spreaders.
yeah, and that's like a tangential example, but it is
Sure.
it is definitely like.
But then Nigeria example.
That was the vaccine example. But I did think he hit it on the head in terms of, maybe we had solutions to this disease.
But the pre-existing laws prevented
Well,
us
his
from.
shtick in that interview is he was like, his basic thesis was they suppressed stuff like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin
Because the incentive wasn't there for those.
Well, it was because if there was like a sort of known treatment available on the market, they wouldn't have been able to push for the emergency use authorization
Of the vaccines.
Yeah, and I know that there's obviously been some pushback on a lot of stuff he said from
Right.
from the left on this.
I
And
mean, the incentive was money.
it seems very obvious to me that like people COVID taught us like so many lessons, right? Like one of the lessons I learned was that science is kind of fucking bullshit. Like they dropped the science world on you, right?
Yep.
But then every time you look deeper, it's like, oh, here's a study. Who funded the study? And oh, Bill Gates funded the study. And
I think what you're saying is the religion of science is bullshit.
so
Science as a philosophy, science as a
science
as a
isn't
practice
science isn't
is not
science
bullshit.
anymore.
Well,
right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not necessarily
Yeah, yeah.
fact because science is a process in itself. Like the
Yes.
scientific
The
method
scientific
is
method is
constantly
fine.
evolving. Like you can't just take a timestamp in time and say, well, the science one time said this. Like it is an evolving method.
Yeah.
And
There's
that-
a point in time in COVID when Fauci literally said, I am the science.
Trust the science.
No, he's literally said, I am the science.
Oh,
and
you
I was
might
like,
as
all
well-
right, well,
you
I'm
might as
out.
well have said,
I'm like,
join
I'm
my
just-
cult.
I'm just like out.
Yeah,
Like,
that became very
it's like
dogmatic.
it's like that is the opposite of science. That's
Right.
like when you read like the Orwell books and they just make you think the thing is the opposite thing.
Right.
And you're like, no, that's not what it is. That drove me nuts. So like hearing
Yeah.
him speak about that really resonated with me. I mean, COVID was
I have a
definitely
question
hard time
on
for
the
me.
military point, and I think you have a few more. In a world where America just sort of withdraws, and we are the number one sort of like military force in the world, we're the number one economy in the world, so there's a target on our back. And I think that most people believe when you are number one, whether it's in a playground or on a soccer team or in the political landscape in geopolitics, there's a target on your back. Someone wants to be number one, you're number one. So one of the ways, the way that we've dealt with this up until now is to be a military superpower and police the world.
Mhm.
In a world where we stop doing that, how safe are we really? How sound is that philosophy of just beefing up defense, beefing up economy, investing in our own people and our own economy? Sounds really good to me.
Yeah.
But does it work? Do we even have an example? Do we even have a way to look at that? If you look back at every great empire that has ever existed, are they ever just sitting back and controlling their borders, or are they constantly playing offense? They're always growing. And if they're not growing, don't they end up collapsing? How does America go inward and isolate itself and yet stay number one and keep growing in a world where it's got a target on its back?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think from like an actual safety perspective, United States is always safe, just from geography, right? Like we have two huge oceans separating us. We have a neighbor to the south that can't put his pants on straight, and you have your feeble neighbor to the
Whoa, that's a
north.
pretty big economy, and that peso is stronger than ever. By the way,
It's doing well,
it's
but
doing really well. It's doing
like-
better than the dollar.
but
the other thing about geography too is it's like, can you produce like food and natural
which we can also do
resources,
that.
which
So like we are
can do,
we are
yeah.
we've been blessed
Like-
to be born here because we can self-sustain. Argentina could probably also self-sustain if they weren't so corrupt. They could produce food for themselves. They could probably defend very well.
Yeah.
But I think there will be an economic damage if we don't. And I would probably say that like it's maybe a good trade-off. And the economic damage is that the whole world has been under the assumption that like you can move a container from one country to the other without any threat of violence to that container. Moving goods back and forth is
But
something
that's
that
what we've been protecting, right?
right, like that's what our generation has no idea of what existed outside of that, right?
Correct.
Before World War II, we didn't understand that like oil may not necessarily move safely from one part of the world to the other, and now we have like been accustomed to a world where just goods trade back and forth easily. And so, if the U.S. does withdraw and doesn't be the policeman of the world, there may be more economic disruptions.
So are you saying that the disruptions, or rather that the repercussions and the negative effects will not be for us? Like, there's no real risk of like withdrawing when it comes to our own situation.
70-inch flat screen TV that we have over here just
I
won't be
won't get it for
$600
$300
anymore.
these
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
can I ask a question about this? I was thinking about it as I was doing my jogging, listening to this guy talk on All In. Like, I was thinking, like, okay, so we have a
What
lot.
headphones do you use, by the way?
The strung-in version that come with the iPhone.
You
Wow.
run with those?
Love
Yeah.
that.
Wow.
They don't pop out.
I got normal ears, dude.
And then you
Doesn't
like,
run
just
fast enough.
dangle, it just dangles the whole time.
Yeah, I have normal shaped ears, and the off the rack headphones fit my normal ears.
I got big ears, bro.
The whole town knows. Take one look.
It's all in proportion, baby. All in proportion.
Mine aren't in proportion. If it was in proportion, my ears would be 6 feet.
Oh, I see. I see. You got the opposite problem.
Sorry. So I was thinking. That we have these alliances.
I think
like,
we just achieved success. Okay.
sort of like
continue.
NATO exists, right? And these
Right.
are like, like an alliance with a lot of the westernized countries, but the U.S. outspends all of them combined in military. If this is an alliance, shouldn't they contribute to this alliance? It feels like they're not doing that.
Right, and they notoriously don't. And there's like, an article within the NATO agreement that says like you have to, contribute X percent of GDP, which I think historically most of the other countries have been below that number. You have like a key economic power, Germany, who's probably got trauma between building up like a strong military domestically. So there are things at play there. And
Germany really screwed itself, unfortunately. I feel bad for them.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay. They can build back. But I mean, I've described it as a series of mousetraps around the world, so that if any one bad actor were to like go off and try to like breach someone's sovereignty, these mousetraps set off. But I don't know if I no longer believe kind of my own perspective anymore, because you can do that same thing, but economically, right? I do think there are, you don't necessarily have bases around the world and military alliances. You can have economic alliances that inflict pain. I think what was it, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that I think was one of the things that Trump like kiboshed right when he got in office.
It was an Obama thing.
Yeah, it was, and I was kind of sad that he did that, because it would have really thwarted, I think, China's like encroachment in that area economically. So I do think you can kind of replace this military I don't know, like expeditions that we're doing with economic alliances. particularly.
Okay.
But I do think like you'll see, and other people have talked about this, where you'll see less globalization, and it'll be costly, right? Because like to bring things
Sure.
home, it'll be extremely costly. I think,
Costly in the short term.
yeah, and Mexico should be the
and the long term.
Mexico should win this
some
like
verticals.
handedly. Like they have a huge market to the north.
Bullish, yeah, bullish Mexico.
They have cheap labor. There is no reason that like I shouldn't be able to ship the same products I'm shipping from China from Monterrey in Mexico with no shipping costs, no like threat of them being harmed on their way, and they should be as cheap, if not a little more expensive than what we're getting in China. So
Brazil too.
Yeah, you're right.
Mexico, Brazil, like really interesting economies to invest into.
Yeah.
Not to delve too back deep into money, but
can we go back to RFK a little bit about?
Yeah.
Like,
What else is
to.
on your bullet
Yeah.
points?
Well,
here?
like energy.
I want to hear more of your takes. I know you get some good takes.
So energy, they pushed him on nuclear, right?
Yes.
And he actually brought up one issue that I had never heard before.
Which one?
Which is that it is not economically viable if no insurance company will insure these nuclear sites. And I had never heard that before. And
me neither.
And like RFK, I needed to do my own research. But like he is saying, like, these things need to exist for 30,000 years. So you amortize that, and is the cost actually as economical as we say? And that's something that I've never heard addressed. I do think there is a full restart of nuclear technology that we can do that is safer, smaller, maybe more decentralized than we imagine it or have imagined in the past. But I thought that was interesting that he brought up a take against nuclear that I hadn't heard before, and kind of threw me off. And
I thought that was
sent back
super
to the drawing
interesting too. I thought another thing was interesting, and you probably actually have a good take on this. He was really, really into solar and wind. But like my understanding is that the problem with solar and wind is that they're intermittent, and like our battery technology as a human species is terrible.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't feel like he gave a good reason why we could just go to what did you think about that?
Well, he did say that the grid was not up to par for that kind of technology, right? Like it's not necessarily that we can like transport that energy. There's obviously a loss when you transport the energy.
A lot of that is physics though. It's not the grid, right?
Yeah. I do think like batteries are a solution, but like you have the same issues with fossil fuels, that it does harm to the environment. It does harm to humans by mining these like kind of rare earth minerals in order to produce these batteries. Hopefully battery technology will accelerate. I know the inflation, quote unquote, Inflation Reduction Act is investing in battery technology. I think it'll be good if we can do that domestically. But yeah, I don't know. I think he explained that, wind and solar is not necessarily like a cure-all. I don't necessarily agree with him that like fossil fuels are the most expensive. Like I think we've talked about in the past how we think it's potentially immoral to deny, especially third world countries, access to fossil fuels because we have
different question.
Yeah, maybe a different question.
Yeah.
Is Social Security on your bullet points? Because I that's something that stood out to me.
Yeah, so he said that refining and touching entitlements is a red line for him. He will not touch them. And I think he made a very heartfelt response that is almost a better argument than say like
it was the closest thing he said to sounding like a politician, but it was honest, so it didn't come off like a politician.
Yeah, Stan Druckenmiller says, here's the Excel spreadsheet, doesn't work, fucking cut him. Yeah. Don't give them 100% of loaf, they can get 80% of loaf. I'm sorry, I'm the rich guy saying that, but the math doesn't work.
But these people have been putting their money and working and setting it aside, and the government's been taking it, and they deserve it.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's going to be like defunct in like 10 years or whatever it is a joke.
He
it's
made
ridiculous.
like a good heartfelt response. It's like, no, we should take care of these people instead of
we
sending
should.
money.
Well, hold on, Armand. I got a question to that.
Yeah,
we're also paying into that.
Yeah,
and we're going to get none of it.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be gone.
That's literally what I'm saying.
But
I'm
they paid into it, and you're saying they get all 100% of what they paid in, and they get whatever they deserved, but we're paying into it and we're gonna get zero.
Who do you think I'm talking about?
I think you're talking about old people.
I'm talking about all of us. Everyone who is taking a portion of their income and putting it into the Social Security pool that has ever put it in deserves to get it.
So, I mean, this is a zero-sum game. So when he's talking about old people.
Sure.
But yeah, he's not
And-
talking about future old people.
No, he's not talking about future old people. He's talking about we'll drain this pool to the people who deserve it because they paid into it. But we also paid into it,
Right.
and that pool's going to be
then-
empty. That
So,
pool's
like,
going to be empty.
I don't know if you guys are operating on the same assumption, but I've always operated that I will
Let's keep
never
going on this.
receive that money in the
Same.
future.
I'm not counting on
And
that
I
money.
wonder if
Agree, but
most
if
of
they
our
paid into it
generation,
and they deserve it, we pay into it. We don't deserve it.
No, we do deserve it. Is what
Absolutely,
I'm
but we're not going to
so
get any
we
of it.
do
here's the
deserve it.
well. Here's the.
We
I'm not
all
saying
deserve
I'm
it.
not saying I agree
saying.
with
You're
this.
saying that it's a zero sum game. Either
It's a
they get it
zero-sum game.
and we don't, or
It's a
no
zero
one
sum
gets
game.
it.
It
Hold
is a zero sum
hold
game.
up, hold up. If your generation
What, do
elects
you
a
have a
bunch of
different
people,
generation?
What do you?
I'm talking about literally a different generation than
Okay, you're
ours.
speaking to the other generation. right
I'm
now.
speaking.
Not
of
your
Okay, you
generation.
pointed to
Yes.
me,
Yeah,
but
you
you
pointed to him.
meant them.
I
If
thought you
your
were calling them old.
generation elects a bunch of
How much older
politicians,
am I than
I
you?
think you're literally the same age, but
You might be older than me.
me, you guys are way older.
if your generation elects a bunch of politicians who promise you a bunch of free shit and you buy into that and you elect them, and then 30, 40 years later, the bill comes due, and then you go, oh, like, well, we were promised it. And it's like a legitimate question. Do you still deserve the money? Like you voted for it, and you're basically saying like, nah, let's let the kids pay for it. I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with that, but that's like what people would say. It's like, well, these Social Security didn't just get dropped from the heavens. Like a bunch of politicians pitched it, and a bunch of people said, yes, give me the free money. And then they didn't do the math on it, obviously. And now it's basically like a Ponzi scheme. Do we deserve to like pay everybody everything that they were promised? Like,
So
I don't
you
know. I
turn
think it's
it
an
in?
interesting
I think
question.
a better question is like, how do you fix the math and turn it into a positive sum game?
I mean, there are easy things to do, and I think Stan Druckenmiller has mentioned a few of these, but like, these inflation adjusted numbers, right? Like every year.
First of all, means testing is like the
Okay,
lowest hanging fruit of all time.
That's the best one. I agree. Like we should never receive Social Security,
My
right?
parents get it. Like there's no
That's-
chance.
that's
on,
dumb.
They don't even want it.
It is literally insurance. It's social insurance, and you only use insurance when you need it. And so people who really need it should get it, but people who are on the borderline or definitely don't need it should not get it. Like
Can those people at least not have to pay into it?
no, because it's insurance is based on risk pools, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone, like our health insurance,
Right.
young people and old people put into the
You
same
could be in the
risk
best
pool.
shape of your life, pay into health insurance your whole life and never get sick, and you're paying into it,
Fine.
and somebody else is super sick and they get paid
And
out.
and
That's
that-
okay.
and that
'cause
works.
It's
But is
pooled.
it adjusted?
No, it's okay. It's pooled risk, and I think everybody's okay with that, so long as it serves the people that it needs to serve.
Yeah. So I think that's one. Should we raise the age? Potentially. I do think the inflation adjusted numbers, like, Stan Druckenmiller made the comment that the inflation adjusted increase for Social Security was like 8%. And like, you got to ask, like, did the average person who has an average salary get an 8% increase in their salary? And the answer is probably no.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Wait, he's saying they boosted payments by?
Yeah, there's something called COLA, which is like the payments adjust according to like I think it's weighted to CPI.
Oh, so you can't even inflate it away.
No,
Oh, Jesus.
no, yeah. So I think those two things are kind of easy ways to go. That maybe if RFK looked into it closely, like, okay, well,
And it stood out to me because he said, "No, this is a red line for me." When everything else he said was like, "Oh, I could look into that deeper," but he was like, "With this one, no, this is a red
But-
line for me." And I was
But
like,
he's right.
"Well, he's old."
Well, any politician who says that they're going to cut that will lose.
Yes, and
It's
that's
a red line.
that's the problem is with this situation is that there are more old voters than there are young voters. So if you just
Yeah.
pander the old voters, that's how you win.
That's why like all the game theory just points to like Bitcoin going up. If
That's
you
why
just- you
all the
just
game
play it
theory
out,
points
it's just
to
that's what's going to
tyranny
happen.
of the majority. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
You just accept that is how the system is set up, and you could fight it, or you could just
play accordingly.
play the game.
Play the hand you're dealt to the best of your ability.
But it's shitty. But that's also
Right.
politics,
And that's exactly where I've stood from the moment we started this podcast. We were talking about Elizabeth Warren and everything. I said, like, I don't care about all of these policies. I just want to play the hand that we're all going to be dealt. Like,
Well, some of them don't set up that way. I think Social Security is one of the ones that it's just like everybody has to play that card or you lose. But I think there is maneuverability in some of the other stuff.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
truth be told, is like, I mean, you see this all over the place. Like, voice, using your voice matters. Like, you can affect change if there's like a mass use of voice, and if there's a mass use of the power of exit, you can like exert change. And those are the two forces that the mass have to exert change. And if you use them, then you can.
I would rather see, I think some of these like means testing is good. I think the COLA revisions is good, like the inflation adjusted, like bring those down. I don't want to see raised taxes, but I wouldn't mind if they rug pulled our generation, because the older generation is used to these like retirement plans, which are defined benefit, right? Your pension plan. Like, I work for this company, I'm assured a certain amount for the rest of my life. Our generation isn't used to that. 401k, you got to put in your own money in order for that to grow. And there's this new perspective that we have as a younger generation. Like, I have to take care of my own retirement. I have to contribute to it in order for it to exist. And, maybe I have a different perspective, but like, I don't mind if they rug pull the younger generation, just say like, these benefits are going to wither away to
Do you-
make sure that
do
we're
you
like a
think
solvent
your
country.
Position in life might have something to do with that? Do you think
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
I just want,
Good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
just to be fair about it, like, do you think the average person your age would feel the same way?
But if they means test it, that's solved for.
Right.
Right. Like, we still solve for like the whole purpose of it was like, the people who can't work, who
Yes.
can, they're supposed to get this benefit, this insurance.
Can I make an argument for why the opposite should happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So if
Didn't
what
see this coming.
yeah, so there's no scenario I think where we just kick all the old people out in the street and like let them die, right?
Of course.
So I think one of two things happens. Like, either A, you like keep the Ponzi going, they keep going, and then they die, and then they sort of pass on all of their stuff, and then they just have all these assets, and then they just transfer to the next generation, and then those people get the assets, and then you're still in this paradigm where a certain select bunch of people got to buy all these assets at like and then have them run up to inflated prices, and then they're just handing them down, and then a bunch of people are sitting there like uh the other alternative I think is that you in the present moment you extract a bunch of money from the existing wealthy population. You just directly take that money and then give it to them, right? Because in the other way, the younger generation is going to pay. They're going to pay for it via inflation, and then they're not going to like. At least if the thing collapses, right? The younger generation can buy a house again. Like, stuff deflates, and like one group of people takes like a bunch of pain, but then the game sort of resets, and then like people can move on. This just keeps the game moving. The younger people still can't play the game. The people who are getting all the benefits don't have to give anything up. And then we basically like pay for it all via inflation. And then who does inflation hurt? It hurts the people who can't buy any assets. And then like, so that's kind of why I think it's fucked. I'm not sure if that's the best
I sort of
way.
agree with you. And this was like my stance from the moment we started our pod, was that estate tax is the way to actually do it, because like, Nick's going to dodge taxes his whole life doing 1031 exchanges, but like ultimately it can be captured if you tax it upon his death. And then like the stuff that he's going to pass down, like it gets taken out of the asset pool that gets passed down.
I don't want my kids to have that money.
Right. You don't want it to happen
Fucking haircut
either.
'em.
But like the fact that it passes essentially tax-free now is, I think it's a problem.
I don't have a problem from like a moral perspective with estate taxes.
It's literally it's the answer. Like,
I wonder if like there's a way, like I wonder if the problem with it is that like you squeeze money out of the economy in some way and then it ends up harmful. That's the thing I worry about. But I think people who argue that it's like some immoral, I think it's like a silly
well, I think
argument.
like those people need to look at the alternatives. Like you said, like it's either going to happen that way or it's going to happen in a more tangible way that you're going to feel during your lifetime.
Well,
And
people
that's gonna be
also,
worse.
the other thing people have to understand, right, is if you got kind of rich in the 90s, and then you invested a bunch of money in the stock market and real estate, and then it 30x'd. Well, that didn't happen because you were a genius. It happened because our genius bureaucratic overlords, they ran this warped policy that just inflated assets to the moon.
Threw gasoline all over the
So
fire.
it's not like unreasonable to me to have the government come back and go like, hey, you know how we just made you really, really rich by artificially manipulating the market for interest rates? Yeah, we're going to claw some of that back. Like that's not like, I don't have a problem with that. Like people who got rich that way, it's not like they risked their lives. They risked like so much to start some crazy business. They just bought a house and they bought the NASDAQ, and then we just sent valuations.
So I think like we had this conversation in our Discord maybe like 12 months ago. And I think people in our Discord, I don't remember names or anything, but I think the counterpoints were like, well, I've set up my kids with this sort of lifestyle based on my hard work. And it's like, okay, that's true. And the kids will benefit, you know, like they will ultimately like reap the benefits of your hard work. But like the alternative is you pass that down and they're going to get fucking squeezed to hell on their own taxes. Like, is that better?
Well, I don't want to like estate tax people who have like $4 million or something. I'm talking about like 100 million.
This is like how to capture.
There's like a point where people are fine, and a lot of that wealth like didn't come from your big brain. It came from.
Well, even if it did, like I think that there's a way to capture the Bezos, Elon type wealth. It's like, well, you can enjoy the fruits of all your innovation and labor, but then once you go, like, okay, now you owe, and that's fine.
Like,
Makes sense.
I think the current level is something like, I don't know, roughly around $10 million, where like there's no taxes. So I mean, there's room there, right? Like there clearly is, and you're not talking about the person who's inherited, you know, like passing down like 50 grand, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about significant amounts of life-changing
high net
money.
worth.
Yeah.
High net worth. People.
Essentially just means testing yet again.
Again.
I'm
yes.
curious-
The people that didn't die with zero.
Right.
Should have spent more.
Suckers.
Okay, anybody want to answer? So Rumble in the chat said estate tax is double taxation and should be removed.
So it is double taxation.
It is. Yes, it
But
is.
so many things are.
Right. Is that inherently bad? Just on its face.
I mean,
There are a lot of things that are
you're
double
either
taxed.
going like my whole thing is name the better way, because you're gonna capture it one way or another. You have to, because we're at this extreme deficit and extreme debt level. How are you going to close the gap?
If we can't grow our way out of the deficit, if we can't inflate our way out of the deficit, we have to tax everyone. Particularly
Like, yeah.
income tax.
So this guy Rumble, what do you want? 75% income
like
tax?
we are double taxed, right? So like when I earn something, we all pay tax on it. You go to the cash register, you buy something, sales tax.
You invest in the stock market, you sell that stock, capital gains tax.
Look, I agree that taxation does suck when you're sort of being taxed like on your labor and stuff that you do. That is like you creating value for yourself, right? That sucks. Where I don't think it sucks is where you participate in a game that is sort of rigged in your favor with these like rules and regulatory capture and whatever you want to say it is. And like you get to put your money in this like magic box that like 100x's your money, and other people can't use the magic box, and the magic box only exists because of these like structures that shouldn't be there. If I take 30% of your money that you make from the magic box, like you didn't do anything. You just put the money in the magic box.
It almost seems like it should tax the magic box even higher.
I will say I'm worried about like not illiquid assets getting passed down, right? So, you know, if there's a $20 million house, how do you handle that situation? Or if Logan Roy passes down to Kendall Roy his Waystar Royco stock, you know, how does he handle
these
that?
are all really interesting, but they're all focused on the citizens of the country. What did you guys think of like RFK's proposals for how to fix the deficit, which went to the Fed, and how we are spending and allocating
And very
our budget
war-based, right?
and all toward Ukraine and wars and military spend. And if all we did was just adjust a few of these things and not spend so much money on COVID shutdowns and helicopter money, we'd be in a very different position.
I think that argument is going to resonate very well over the next like 12 months.
Well, I mean, the
Well-
truth is, it's going to require both. It's going to require cutting of spending and increasing of revenues. How do you do both? Because like the Dems right now are in a battle with the Republicans over the debt ceiling, which the Democrats won't even bend on cutting a single dollar. They won't cut a single dollar. How are we going to cut anything? We can't even raise a debt ceiling when we have to pay our bills. Like, we have to do both. We have to cut spending and we have to increase revenues, and neither are happening.
right.
I think we stop spending on I think we stop spending on war. Like, we're never going to stop spending on
Defense,
like old people and healthcare. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff we could, I think, stop spending on. I'm personally of the mindset that we're in a completely fucked situation. Everybody in the world is in a completely fucked situation, and we should just take advantage of our reserve currency status and be like, yeah, sorry everybody, we're just gonna print a bunch of money and try to just boost GDP.
What do you
and
think's
fix the
been
country
happening?
here? And then we're sorry about that. And then just
That's the game that's going on.
I mean,
yeah,
I think
we're in a good position to do it. It is, I think, like the game theory optimal path to take.
Yeah,
I think austerity is stupid. I think
Austerity
when you
kills
are
you.
like the reserve currency
Yeah.
of the world, to go down
Austerity
path doesn't
kills
make
you,
any
so you
sense.
can't do that. So I think like ultimately Balaji's right, but his timeline was just fucking ridiculous. But ultimately he's right. It's like you need to print dollars and then basically sell those dollars for hard
But
assets.
if you print those dollars in such a way where you create like 10% inflation, but you juice growth to like 15%, can actually kind of work. It still sucks for all the people who already bought all of your bonds and they're totally screwed. But like you're
that's
pretty good.
That's the game we're playing, but like I don't think that the growth.
I don't think that is the game we're playing right now. Like, I think a lot of people aren't going fully down that path. Like, I think the right certainly doesn't want to go down that path. I think they sometimes talk about it in the realm of we should like bring manufacturing back home and like kind of anti-China stuff. Then you can kind of bring them on board. But I don't think they're of like the generalized mindset of like, let's spend all of this money. And well, I shouldn't say that. There is like this populist wing of the right. I think that does kind of believe that it's not like a monolith, but I don't think that's like a totally right-wing position right now.
By the way, I think that was Balaji's point the whole time.
It was, but he just like he muddied his waters by putting his own deadline on it, by which he had no
I
fucking
actually like
thing.
thought about this a lot, and I think he knew what he was doing the whole time.
But he never
God.
even explained it that way because he's
No, of
just-
course he didn't, because if he said it that way, then the message wouldn't have landed.
because
So he could only tell you in hindsight.
but that's
that he sent the
everybody's
million-
point, and they're looking at him like that is stupid.
But he
Right.
got your attention and you had the conversation.
I mean, I
That's
think
what he
like
paid for.
our group's like investment thesis like holds that we see these problems. We don't think our political structures are made to solve these problems. So we just have to like fend for ourselves and be a little selfish and like make sure that we survive and thrive in that area, which is like we've realized that Bitcoin, Ethereum, cryptocurrency in general may be the fastest horse to beat us. If there's other tax deferred ways like real estate, that's a great way. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like we're on the right track to, if this does play out in the bad scenario we're talking about, we'll be good. And I hope that's the case.
On a relative
What do you
basis.
On a
say
relative
to
basis, right?
your, honestly, your hypothetical relative in Croatia?
Sorry.
No, but that you would not say that. You would not just say sorry.
Hold stable coins.
I mean,
I mean, like you want to be U.S.
I mean,
dollar
you-
denominated,
like,
right?
No, like just imagine like you love this person, they can't pay for their life, they're suffering. What would you say to the people that aren't in the privileged position of being, in the country that is a reserve currency of the world?
I think Nick's right. You hold your wealth in stable coins.
Which you can.
That wasn't my question. What do you say to that person?
You tell them to hold their wealth in stable coins.
I mean, like I do think like still, the thing that
the one that gets depegged every other week, or which one?
They're fine. Like
I mean, they
USDC's at a dollar.
they trade
Yeah,
premium.
they're all
They-
DAI, USDC, USDT. They're all better than the Lebanese currency for sure.
but I do think like I think whether you lived in a very thriving economy or not, like entrepreneurship is still like a great path, no matter where you live. Like if you can work digitally or be an owner, I think that path still exists, right? Like wherever you live, you know.
Denominate in dollars as
You're
much as you can.
saying to like work online, freelance,
God,
and
that's
earn
such a like
dollars.
shitty take too. Like I
What do you
do
say?
think that's like a good path, but like that's so not reasonable for like most people. So I don't think
Well, I
that.
don't know if that. No. Why
I
not?
think Balaji's framework is the right one. Just like buy Bitcoin, and that's his fucking message.
Okay, 98% denominate in dollars, and then 2% denominate in Bitcoin, and then try to get exposure to dollar. Like, this is just the way it's going to play out. Like, if the ship is sinking, the U.S. is not going to be throwing lifelines out everywhere in the world, because every politician who's in office in the U.S. is going to get raked over the coals if they throw anybody in the U.S. under the bus, right? Like, the whole fiat system is destined to crash into the iceberg at some point. We are steering the ship. We get to decide who gets on the lifeboats, and we get to like, that's the kind of cold, hard reality of how it is. And to think that we're going to just save a bunch of, it's just not going to happen.
I mean, Armand, you're getting encouragement on this question, and it's kind of like I don't know if I have like a good answer. Like, I mean, ideally, you could live in a country that doesn't have as much taxation as we do, but you earn in dollars somehow. Somehow, I don't know. Like, export something. Like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I think that the solutions that we might come up with are going to be intelligent solutions, first of all, and mostly inaccessible solutions that just will not be accessible to the majority of people. So, like, when the rest of the world starts burning because this scenario plays out, my concern is, what do the majority of human beings on this planet do? I'm simply trying to get to that.
yeah,
I'm honestly, genuinely
they
wondering.
suffer like the majority of humans always have. The difference this time is like, it's
the majority
actually,
of humans today are not suffering.
no, throughout human history, like this has happened a lot.
But no,
and
hold
like,
on. This arc has always been going in an up and positive direction.
but it has
And this is the first time that like,
downturns.
it definitely has downturns.
Yeah.
So the question is just how to prevent the majority of people from getting really hurt.
What I'm trying to say right now is the problem right now is actually like a knowledge gap. Throughout most of human history, you were just fucked. Like, there's literally nothing you could do. Now, like, there is actually stuff you could do. There's like a large knowledge chasm to cross, right? If you're like, well, you have to understand the nature of the dollar reserve system and cryptocurrency and how to hold and use
Right.
stablecoin.
No, exactly.
Yeah, that's obviously difficult for people, but it is theoretically possible, at least now. So that is like a hopeful thing, I think.
So the best kind of version of what we've come up with is to buy USD denominated.
Denominate your life in USD as much as you can. Hold your cash in USD. Take payments in USD.
But as
stuff.
as an Ecuadorian, as a Venezuelan, as a Bolivian, as a Croatian, like,
I
how
have
realistic
hired
is this
I
that
have
I
hired
can
people on
operate my
Upwork,
life?
and they say, I've literally had people on Upwork in South America say, I want to be paid in stable coins. Can you do
Totally.
that?
No, that
Like,
totally.
they know.
Yeah.
And like, it is possible.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to my friend Mike, ZipDev. Like, they run this company that helps you recruit, and our friend, I should say, Eric and I. And yeah, I mean, the majority of people that so this is like a site for basically connecting with developers. It's actually a great service for being able to find developers that work in South America. And the benefit of developers in South America is, first of all, these are very smart, talented people in like Argentina and Mexico and Chile, but the time zone is really good compared to like Europe, right? When you're in the US. But yeah, the majority of these people want to be paid in the dollar. And not only that, but like, especially in Mexico, like that currency, like I said, is holding very strong. And so, yeah, there's just a lot going on there with, the currency exchange market is like extremely volatile right now. And especially in this market where a lot of startups are just like struggling, and laying off, but then you have a lot of startups growing in the generative AI market. Yeah, there's a lot happening there. But okay, I think we're in a good place to kind of palate cleanse this.
Yeah, let's do it.
a
Let's
little bit.
transition. By the way, we forgot to do this earlier, even though I made a note. Everybody in the chat, if you can like the video, it really helps us out.
What does it do for you?
It boosts the video in people's
Boost my
feeds.
testosterone.
How do
Lets
you-
more people out there.
Oh, I thought it was more for us, for you, like emotionally, like.
No,
get, like, a
it
like.
allows more people to discover the
Oh.
awesome podcast
Got
and
it.
community that you have all discovered. You're doing this for everybody else out there. Please, please hit the like button on the stream.
Yeah. And most people
help us
listen
out.
on podcasts and Spotify, but if you're hearing names, you're like, who the fuck are these people? They're
Yes.
members of our community in the Discord. So join the Discord at alfalfapod.com.
Amazing
They're also
people.
probably in the chat right now. So if you would like, you can listen to this on YouTube, the replay, or join us live every Wednesday night. So yeah, I think
We're
that's
gonna
good.
start throwing your comments on the screen. We're gonna start doing all
Oh,
kinds
there's
of
stuff in the pipeline. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're
Big
gonna make
things.
we're gonna make this pod, and we're gonna make this an event. And ultimately, I think the people that get the best experience are the ones that show up live. We're gonna put comments on the screen. We're gonna set up all kinds of stuff to just make it very community driven. One thing that we've always said, if you've never heard this before, is the community is the fifth man or the fifth person, since there's definitely women out there as well.
Yeah.
But the fifth person of this pod, and it would not exist. It would not exist without the community. So for sure.
Well said, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Did you guys see Tetris?
I did see Tetris.
Tetris was really
The
good.
movie.
Yeah.
I didn't see it yet.
Oh, it's so
It's
good.
so well done.
I've watched at least 3 documentaries on the making of Tetris.
But you haven't seen the movie?
No, I haven't.
I haven't either. I
keep-
played it on Game Boy.
Where do
endlessly.
I? Where
Dude,
do I
have you
watch
guys
it?
seen have you guys seen Kingsman?
I did watch
The
one
movie?
and I
The
watched
movie
one and
Kingsman?
two. Yeah.
You know the young kid, the
Uh,
main guy?
yeah. What do they call him?
Bugsy, Bigsy,
Bugsy, something like
Babsy.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it'll come to me in a second. So he's the main guy in Tetris movie, but like a completely different character.
Eggsy.
Eggsy, there it is. Eggsy, my boy. Yeah. So he crushes the role. You have not seen it?
Well, I lived it, dude. I played that game.
But at the end, they do show the actual
What are
actual
you
people
talking
in
about?
this whole.
Well,
You've
I
seen the movie because you played the game?
I set up rows to be 5 tall, and then I would just
Oh, get the fuck out!
You know when you
here.
throw that-
Get the
you
fuck-
throw that
Oh
vertical
my
line
God.
down,
Yeah.
and you get the 5-liner,
dude,
and you're just like,
so satisfying.
The game,
So
the
satisfying.
game, I think, shows up in
dude,
the
the
movie
fact
like.
that you don't even know how satisfying it is to get the 5-liner down.
First of all, I'm
you'd probably never
probably
play
the
it.
only person that has it on their phone. Probably the only person that has Tetris, official Tetris game on my phone.
Wow.
You guys have it on
you
your
have a
phone?
mobile?
No, I still got the Game Boy.
I don't play
Yeah. Of
course I have
games
it on
on
my
my phone. I thought you of all people would understand
It's
that.
the only game I have. So Eggsy crushes it. Nick, can I talk to you? Because these guys are just going to chirp
Sure.
and say nonsense about the movie since they haven't seen it.
I've never seen it.
I've seen the
Um,
documentaries. I know the story. It's a great story.
No.
Oh no, this
no.
is okay.
This is the good one. So what did you think overall? Like,
I was like interested in the geopolitics part of it, like how these two
Yes.
countries were going to interact. Like, what a great depiction of what it's like in a Soviet Union communist.
wasn't it hella interesting?
It was like he's like,
seeing the
so like
houses
I need to get a
and-
phone to call my wife, and they're like, well, you can't call internationally. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, we can't call outside the country, like it just doesn't exist. And then like, well, maybe your hotel has one that can call internationally, but there's a long wait time. How long? An hour? No, 2 weeks.
Yeah, a
2
week,
weeks, to call home. And I thought that was
It
fascinating.
was
And like
incredible.
me and my girlfriend ended up talking more about like, what is a communist country, and like there's no such thing as companies. Like there is a pant that is available in your supermarket, but it's not, 7 different brands and 7 different colors and 7 different
No, you
styles.
get one.
You get one, right? Because it's like allocated and resource managed by the
centrally
government.
planned.
Yeah, centrally planned.
There's just like a minister. He's like, how many pants do we need?
Yeah.
I don't know.
What's Thomas Sowell's book? Is
7
it
million.
Basic Economics, or what is the name of the book?
I mean, that's one of his books.
Yeah, that's the one that like eviscerates the central planning the
Yes.
best. Thomas Sowell, shout out. By the way, can someone more popular than us, get Thomas Sowell on a podcast, please? He
No.
only.
Can we?
How about we
please?
do?
I mean, I would happily do it, but
Could we
like,
put
I
a
just
little
want
effort
I want
into that?
him more on the record. I want more of his words,
Dude,
like
Rogan's
enshrined.
tried to get him.
Yeah, I think he has.
He just doesn't want to do. It's so weird.
I mean,
Tell him
I
he can sell his
think-
book. Like, all he wants to do is sell his books. Like,
I
let
don't
him
think
sell his
anyone's
books.
trying to. I think we need to find out what his deeper motivation is. I don't think he cares to make more money. I don't think he cares to sell more books.
Hmm.
Maybe he does actually care to sell more books for the message. We need to find out what that is.
The only pod I've ever seen him on is the Rubin Report.
Mm-hmm.
He goes
saw
to
that.
very like easy audiences typically for his interviews, but like I think
I've only seen him on the Rubin Report and like the Hoover Institution, which is like just the place at Stanford he works at.
Yeah, he
So
hasn't been
I
on
don't.
any
Yeah, he
pods.
doesn't.
I would go to him. Like I would like go to.
Definitely.
I would like rent a
need-
studio to like in
Absolutely.
Stanford.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
we
I
should
would ride. I
probably-
would ride a bike to him. Yeah, for sure. The whole
All
way.
500 miles.
Yes,
Yeah?
yes,
Yeah.
I would ride a bike to interview Thomas.
If
Sowell
you would
before
ride a
bed.
bike 500 miles to Thomas Sowell, how about you send an email to him first and get this booked?
No, the email.
That's the hard part.
No, the. He's gonna say
Imagine
no
if
to the
you-
email. I'm saying if this is basic, just conditional stuff. Given that he has said yes, I will ride a bike.
I think if you
Oh.
vlog yourself bike riding 500 miles to Thomas Sowell's office,
say yes.
then he would say yes.
No, he would just laugh at me. He'd be like, moron.
Well, I think the answer is just show up. Show up at
You
at
might finally
Stanford.
fit into size 31s, dude.
What do you guys think about just showing up?
Not
Walking
gonna
onto
work.
campus.
not gonna work.
I'll do it. I'll do it. Do it tomorrow. You don't think that's going to work?
No.
All right. Well, I'll do it myself.
Can we talk about Air a little bit? Because
Yeah.
the guy who sold Jordan the deal just showed up at his house and it worked.
That's true.
Just showed up at his fucking house.
Sonny
Matt
Vaccaro.
Damon
Oh, I thought that doesn't work.
Yeah,
showed up at Michael Jordan's
Sonny
house.
Vaccaro.
You guys don't believe in dreams?
I mean, what a
That's how he
great
made his dream happen.
fucking deal. Like this whole movie was about a
Nike
a
was
deal.
like a couple $billion or something, right? And then it's
they
like
sucked
at
at,
that
the
time.
at the shoe business.
yeah,
What
they
was,
sucked at everything.
MJ's mom's name? Dolores Jordan or something?
Yeah,
She was
like
the
that.
fucking mastermind behind the whole thing.
They made her look amazing.
She changed the whole industry of
She invented the royalty.
invented the royalty.
Her negotiation in the movie, I'm not, no spoiler alerts, but her negotiation style, I thought the presence and the delivery was 10 out of 10.
Yeah, we
It
have a
was
mutual
very good.
friend who is a great negotiator, and one of the things he always says going to negotiation is that you have to have 100% confidence going into there, and you have to like act as if.
And she did.
And she did. She says, "You know, my son will be the greatest. He will deliver. He will win championships. He will win multiple MVPs." And that was like genuine,
She
And
has to just use all of his own words.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
And then he did go back and think on it, right? And then he went back and talked to
He had to pitch Phil Knight
Yeah.
and be like, "Listen, dude, sorry, I didn't close it. It's not going to happen because she wants a percentage of revenue." And I think there's a little poetic
How
license in that
funny-
scene. He's like, fuck it, we'll do it."
Yeah,
How-
what does Phil Knight say in that
How
actual
funny was Phil Knight depiction though? Like by Ben Affleck.
I wish it wasn't Ben Affleck. Just
I wish it
'cause-
wasn't
Yeah, I
either.
wish it was someone else.
Right.
But
But it was really funny to me.
yeah.
Like the contradictions and the comedy of the character were so. Have you guys read Shoe Dog?
No.
No.
I have not either. I've done the Blinkist for it,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that he was like that.
The quirky.
Like this philosophical Zen master.
But
Like,
like
Phil
not
Jackson.
really,
Yeah, Phil
really,
Jackson,
and
like-
has like a grape Porsche.
It was
know.
all for show.
It's like it was all aspirational in the
Uh-huh.
early days. I think he evolved into it.
Uh-huh.
Like it was very aspirational. He's constantly freaking out, but then trying to calm himself. And like he was a very funny character. I thought he was very contradictory.
My favorite character in the whole thing was the actual shoe dog who was like the guy who's like, my entire life is basketball shoes.
Oh, you're talking about the
Oh, I
guy
loved
in the
him.
basement
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
designed
He was
the shoe.
basically the where's my stapler?
Yes. Where have you seen my
Have you
stapler?
seen my stapler?
But he's like, I have
Loves-
the magnum opus here. I have it.
yeah.
And he designs like the MJ1 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the MJ1 was pretty iconic, man. I mean,
I didn't know they were
all
paying
those
the
funny
fines.
things, like, okay, we're definitely, I think from here on forward, let's just say it's all spoiler alert and keep going. I mean, we've
It's
just
not
been
really
spoiling.
like anybody
No, but,
out
like,
there
we're
could
just
already
giving,
know
like,
the story of
I
like
know,
the
I know.
Jordans.
It's true. It's
just like a thing that
historical.
happened.
True. Like one thing that I thought was really cool was like paying the fine $5,000 every time he wears the shoes, and he sold like 180 million shoes in the first year. It's like it's a joke. They were worried about like
paying
$72
$5,000
times 5. You
Yeah.
know, it's just like the funniest things that they were worried about. But I have to say, really incredible of the mom to ask for the royalty. And honestly, huge credit to Phil Knight. I mean, what an incredible CEO decision to say, I'll fight the board on this. Yes, this sets a precedent. Yes, every company from here on is going to want to make a shoe. Yes, every player from here on is going to want their own shoe. It's exactly what happened. Iverson's and everyone has their shoe now. But that moment, that gut level, risk-taking level decision making that's required in entrepreneurship was exhibited by Phil Knight. I haven't read the book, but I'm very curious.
But maybe the whole point of the movie
see-
was that Sonny Vaccaro's the guy who deserves the credit. Like,
I don't know
Yeah,
if you
he
guys
is
are
the
ready to talk
guy.
about this aspect, but MJ is for sure the greatest athlete of all time, any sport. And like all these documentaries, The Last Dance, Air, etc., like cement that. Like it's like the history is told by the victors, and like this is the example where it's like, okay, well, this is the best athlete of all time, and here is our evidence.
I feel like a GOAT episode coming
Well, the best-
forth, but like maybe the best episode of all athlete of all time is not a human. You ever consider that? You ever heard of Secretariat? Secretariat was
Michael Jordan's better
the
than
most
Secretariat.
dominant athlete.
Is that a horse?
It is a
Yes.
horse. Most dominant athlete in a
Ooh,
sport.
interesting.
But anyway, maybe we'll reserve it for
Okay,
a GOAT
reserve
episode.
that because, I mean, the answer is Lionel Messi.
Ooh,
Because not
Kelly
only was he
Slater.
GOAT athlete, but he was my GOAT human. So
Ooh.
obviously,
I think we already know maybe our answers, but I would still like to have this debate.
So after watching Air, I had to re-watch Last Dance. I only went through like the first 2 or 3,
That's so good.
and I'm like, oh my god, this
No,
guy
it's
is
incredible.
so fucking dominant. And then like I had just finished watching a 38-year-old LeBron James lose in 4 straight games, and I'm like, oh man, LeBron's good, but it's
Ooh.
just not.
Sure.
It's just not MJ.
That is the debate, but it's not the
It's
same.
not
for me
MJ.
either. I think that the majority of people, when they vote, I've seen this poll a few times, and LeBron seems to win the GOAT vote between MJ and LeBron. But the
Oh, that's
only
not
reason
true.
I think that he
LeBron
wins,
seems to win.
No,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not
Nobody.
true.
Who are you talking to? Nobody.
You're
thinks
talking
that.
to 6 soccer players,
Literally, nobody.
and
thinks
4
that.
out of the 6 soccer players
That's
say
just like
LeBron.
that's outrageous.
have you ever just been like bullied on a podcast?
Yeah.
Like that's what it
Yeah,
looks
'cause
like.
like, what you're saying
just
is wrong.
Things that are
So-
factually
Yeah,
wrong.
that's wrong.
On
Who'd you ask, Bard?
ESPN.
well, if
Bard.
ESPN said
You
it.
asked Bard,
Did
and
Stephen
Bard
A.
said,
Smith say it? Must be true.
Stephen A. Smith is God. Stephen A. Smith
However-
pointed to multiple polls where this is the fact that the majority of the time that this poll is like occurs, LeBron seems to win it. The reason that I think he wins it, guys,
No.
slow your roll for a
No.
second. I'm literally on
just
the same
please
team.
get to the end of it
Okay,
because
outrageous.
like this
Yes.
is horrible.
Oh my God. The reason he wins it is because we're living in that era. So there's a bias toward
Yes.
the player living in the era.
I agree. That's
You guys would let a person.
I think we got
podcast
Jordan has a
complete-
comment
My
about
God.
Kelly Slater.
Okay.
Kelly
most
Slater.
dominant athlete in his sport of all
11
time.
world titles, he says.
Skateboarder.
11 world titles.
Surfboarder. All right, we'll
Surfboarder.
reserve.
The Gretzky one is a great point. Actually,
Gretzky,
yeah,
I
he's
think
good.
you can make a case that Gretzky is fucking ridiculous. Like if you look at
His nickname
Gretzky's,
is the greatest.
if you look at Gretzky's stats,
The great
like,
one.
in his time,
The great
the
one.
problem is he played hockey. But like if he was doing that in basketball, it'd been a joke.
Oh, he
would've been
does
scoring,
figure
like,
skating?
He would have been averaging like 52 a game, and
I'm sorry, guys. The GOAT discussion was completely closed after Messi won the World Cup. It was already closed
Oh my
before the
God.
World Cup. It is double closed after.
You guys
the
already
World
know how
Cup.
this episode is going to go. This future episode.
It's double closed.
Okay.
But I was a big fan of the movie. You guys don't know statistics. You should probably brush up on how that
You're not
all
good
works.
at math. It's fine.
Stephen A. Smith, basically.
Stephen A. Smith,
anything
good
he
at math.
says,
You not.
you not. Yeah, I found these like sort of reenactments of origin stories to be really good lately. I wonder what's next. I mean, are there any that you think
Oppenheimer.
about that you would like? That's
Oppenheimer.
going to be good.
Oppenheimer is going to be so
Wait,
good.
Oppenheimer's gonna be a thing?
Oppenheimer,
Christopher Nolan's next
It's a
movie is
Christopher
Oppenheimer,
Nolan
dude.
joint.
Oh, I had no idea.
and the guy from Peaky Blinders.
And I
This
thought
is
you
why-
knew
This
this.
is why I come here to learn things.
Bro, Cillian Murphy.
great actor.
Is that the Peaky Blinders guy?
Yes, he plays Oppenheimer.
And,
plays Oppenheimer.
And it's just a
Wow.
hair under 3
Can't wait till
hours,
he just shoots
which
a
is
guy
the
in the face.
perfect amount of time for not only a podcast, but a great movie. So he actually said it's going to be his longest movie yet. It'll be just a hair under 3 hours, and people are very excited about
I'm very
it.
excited for it myself.
The trailer's wild.
I am become God.
That was good.
Oh,
That was good.
all right.
Well, we wrapped up the bottle. Does anyone want to polish this?
Yeah,
rest
I would.
off?
No,
Yeah, I've been
actually-
waiting to polish it off. The bottle keeps passing around past me.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm. One thing that I thought was really alarming is that we didn't start with a cheers. I just thought it was a little disrespectful.
Well, we came into the episode panicking because the sound didn't work.
That's
to be
true.
fair,
Thank you.
we need to get to the point where we're just
Show
here.
up comfortably.
We're here.
for
We're already
once.
talking for like 20 minutes, and then the camera turns on. We're like, "Oh, hey there, how's everybody doing?
I bet you'd love that.
Didn't see you there.
Yeah.
We're all relaxed. No, this
Mr.
one was like,
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Have we ever had a relaxed
Picture
episode?
Steven with
no,
some
never.
Steven with some puppets.
5 seconds before this episode, we thought we were going to have to pull the plug.
I'm in my headphones. I'm like, it's buzzing. It's still buzzing.
All right, guys. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Say something really inspirational.
Say something really inspirational.
I am
you
become
know.
God.
What is that?
That's Oppenheimer's quote.
What?
After
Really?
he,
I
after
thought
he,
that was you quoting Dogecoin.
no, that's Oppenheimer after he invented
that was
the
you
atom
being
bomb.
He
drunk.
said, "I am become God."
Look it up
So he
or watch the movie.
I was just thinking, like, why is he not using an accent?
he's
to
like
say
the
it? I
very-
am become God.
Destroyer of Worlds. He's actually quoting, I think,
He's like very coin much wow.
quoting like a Buddhist proverb. I'm imagining.
Huh.
Yeah, well, you guys are
learned
uncultured cretins.
I like it.
I think we tackled some presidential, like, political stuff that's pretty tough to talk about. Eric's wearing a radically moderate T-shirt. I hope we like lived up to that. You know,
I think RFK is like the closest thing we have to that slogan.
yeah, maybe we'll see.
What about? Oh, I
think I
shouldn't
am.
do it.
We shouldn't do it. Yeah, we're gonna like get pulled back into the vortex
Hold on.
now.
Should I? Yeah.
He can't.
I'm gonna
he can't
pour
stop.
again. I'm gonna
He can't
pour
stop.
again. If
But-
we're gonna start talking
Can I
again.
say his name?
Who?
Ron Paul.
What?
He
I liked
reminds you of
Ron
Ron
Paul.
Paul.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
He
No.
reminded me of Ron Paul.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Big time.
No.
Yep.
I mean,
It's okay.
I
Also
that
unelectable.
Think
analogy.
about it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's continue the conversation in the Discord. We often do every week, so
Mhm.
I hope you guys can hop in there. And I don't know, curious what you guys think about RFK. Is he electable? And if he is electable, is he even a good candidate? And will we see him debate Joe Biden?
Yeah, and one of the things I'd like to start doing is like, it's easy to say like, hey, what do you guys want us to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. But to actually source that material, I think the best way for us to do that as the fifth human of the pod is have the conversation in our Discord, and the conversations that do come up organically actually serve as inspiration for us. We often tend to jump in and have the conversations with everyone, but then they often carry over into the next week. And I think that can be a source of material for us to carry into the conversation on the pod live and then back into the conversation, online on Discord. So I see it as a through line between the community, the Discord, the pod all at once, the chat here today. So I say, let's carry the conversation in the Discord, see what comes up in the week, and then we'll bring it to the next episode.
And for $9, Steven will take a shot.
I heard that's all it costs. Is that true?
I $999.
Well,
If
we're
any
gonna
of
set
you
that up.
donate $999 in an episode, I will do
Is
a
that
shot.
all it takes
of
to get you to
tequila.
take a shot?
Honestly, I feel like that's too little money for the pain it causes me, but I'll do it.
You'll be fine.
I'll do it for the memes.
Um,
I believe in you.
Yeah, thank you to everybody who showed up for this. If you have not already, please subscribe to the YouTube.
Yep.
We're trying to boost that thing now.
Tell your mom we're here 5 p.m. every Wednesday, Pacific Standard Time. Honestly, moms love this show. I don't know if you guys knew that. I'm not kidding.
Tell your mom.
Yeah, tell your mom.
Yeah,
No, it's a real thing.
yeah.
I know
he's
multiple
right. Tell your mom to
moms
watch.
amongst our moms that listen to the show.
My
So
mom
can we
liked. My mom liked our show.
moms love the show. So let's keep it real. All right. Love you guys.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Peace.
Good to go, Jordan. Close down.